The collar of the graphite gray suit felt less like formal wear and more like a tactical chokehold. Ethan Cole ran a finger along the inside of the stiff fabric, trying to loosen it without looking like he was suffocating, though the sensation was becoming distinctively real. He stood in the foyer of the Zenith, a neutral zone restaurant that hovered 40 stories above the sprawling, neon-veined grid of New Seattle. The air inside smelled of ozone, expensive synthetic lilies, and the underlying sterile scent of political desperation. This was the Harmony Match program in action, a government-funded initiative designed to pair humans with off-world allies to prove that the integration treaties were more than just ink on paper. To Ethan, it felt like a propaganda engine running on high-octane delusion. He stepped up to the check-in station, where a floating kiosk drone bobbed at eye level. The machine was a smooth sphere of white ceramic with a holographic face projected onto its surface. A generic, pleasant human female visage that blinked with unsettling regularity. "Welcome to the Zenith, Citizen Cole." The drone chirped, its voice modulated to a perfect, soothing alto. "Your participation in the Harmony Match initiative is a testament to the brave new future we are building. Unity across species begins with a single conversation." Ethan stared at the machine, his jaw tightening. A brave new future. He had heard that phrase 5 years ago, right before his unit was dropped into the dust storms of a border moon to hold a line that did not exist on any public map. "Just check me in," Ethan said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Certainly. Your table is reserved in the skylight atrium. Your match has been notified of your arrival. Please enjoy the view while you wait." Ethan walked past the drone, navigating the dining floor. The restaurant was a masterpiece of architectural overcompensation. The ceiling was a transparent dome revealing the traffic lanes of the city below. Streams of amber and sapphire light flowing like digital blood. The tables were occupied by a mix of species that would have terrified a civilian a decade ago. He saw a massive chitinous Valerian dignitary carefully slicing a protean steak, sitting opposite a nervous-looking human woman in a floral dress. He saw 2 reptilian Krell laughing, a sound like grinding stones while sharing a bottle of blue wine with a human man who looked like he was about to pass out. It was all so performative. Everyone was smiling too hard. Ethan found his table, a secluded booth near the edge of the glass floor. He sat down, the suit pulling tight across his shoulders. He was a big man, built with the dense, compact muscle of someone who had spent years carrying heavy packs in high gravity. And he felt absurdly large for the delicate, floating furniture. He checked his wrist chrono. 7 o'clock on the dot. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. A server drone drifted by and placed a glass of water on the table. The water was chilled to exactly 4 degrees Celsius. Perfection. Ethan took a sip and watched the couple at the next table. A human man was trying to explain the concept of a fork to a tentacled aquatic diplomat who seemed to think the utensil was a weapon. They laughed. It sounded genuine. Ethan felt a spike of cynicism so sharp it almost tasted like copper in his mouth. 20 minutes. He drummed his fingers on the table. The rhythm was a subconscious code he had learned in the Corps, a tap-tap drag that meant hold position. He forced his hand to stop. He was not holding a position. He was getting stood up on a government-sponsored blind date. 30 minutes, the host, a sweating human man in a tuxedo that cost more than Ethan's annual pension, hurried over. He clutched a datapad to his chest like a shield. "Mr. Cole," the host said, breathless. "I am terribly sorry. It appears there is a slight delay with your match. Transit issues in the upper orbital ring. You understand how the docking queues can be?" Ethan looked at the man. He knew that tone. He had heard it from commanding officers explaining why extraction was late. He had heard it from doctors explaining why the nerve damage would not heal. It was the bureaucratic, practiced, hollow tone of someone delivering a lie they did not expect you to believe, only to accept. Right, Ethan said. Orbital traffic. We expect her arrival shortly, the host stammered, backing away. Please, have a complimentary appetizer on the house. Ethan watched the man retreat. He looked at the empty seat across from him. The restaurant buzzed with conversation, the clinking of glasses, the hum of levitation fields. He was the only person sitting alone. He felt the weight of the scars on his back, the phantom ache in his left knee, the exhaustion of trying to pretend he belonged in this soft, shiny world. He exhaled, a long, weary breath that deflated his posture. He placed his napkin on the table. I guess the blind date was over before it even started, he muttered to the empty air. He placed his hands on the table to push himself up. He was done. He would go home, drink cheap whiskey, and stare at the wall until sleep took him. As he turned to leave, the air in the restaurant changed. It was not a sound. It was a pressure, a sudden drop in barometric density that made his ears pop. The ambient noise of the room, the laughter, the music, the drone hum, seemed to get sucked into a vacuum. The security field at the main entrance, a shimmering curtain of blue light designed to scan for weapons, flickered violently. It did not just blink, it distorted, the light bending inward as if reality itself was briefly losing focus. The air unzipped. A figure stepped through the distortion. She was tall, easily 6 feet, with a lithe, powerful grace that made the human movement around her look clumsy. Her skin was a pale, luminous slate gray that seemed to absorb the restaurant's lighting rather than reflect it. She wore a coat of deep, midnight fabric that moved like liquid smoke around her legs, cut in a style that was neither human nor traditionally alien. Sharp angles softening into flowing drapes. It was her face that stopped the room. It was humanoid, high-cheeked and severe, framed by hair that looked like spun silver wire. Her eyes were solid violet, rimmed with black, and they scanned the room with a terrifying, predatory calm. This was Lyra Vey. Ethan had seen pictures in the dossier they had sent him, but the flat images had failed to capture the sheer kinetic energy of her presence. She did not just occupy space, she commanded it. She radiated a kind of quiet danger, the way a loaded weapon on a table changed the energy of a conversation without moving. The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. The Valerian dignitary stopped chewing. The Krell stopped laughing. Everyone stared, not just out of fear, but out of a primal, involuntary awe. Her presence made the room feel suddenly smaller, as if gravity had shifted its axis to center solely on her. Ethan stood halfway out of his seat, caught in the pull. Lyra's violet eyes swept across the dining floor, dismissing faces with a blink, until they locked onto Ethan. There was no hesitation. The moment she saw him, the search ended. She walked straight toward him, moving with a stride that was smooth and silent. It felt as if the crowded restaurant was just a hallway leading to this exact table, to this exact second. She stopped 2 feet from him. Up close, the air around her felt electrically charged, raising the hair on Ethan's arms. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable, her calm absolute. "Apologies," she said. Her voice was low, resonant, and carried a melodic distortion from her translator implant. "I had to arrive after they finished watching you." Ethan blinked, his brain rebooting. He sank back into his seat, his humor snapping up like a shield to cover the sudden spike in his heart rate. "After who finished watching me? The critics? Because I have been told my sitting technique is award-winning." Lyra tilted her head. The movement was avian, sharp and inquisitive. She sat down opposite him, her movements fluid. "I am not aware of any awards for sitting," she said, her tone completely serious. "But if you have won them, that is commendable. Efficiency and stillness is a warrior trait." Ethan stared at her. She wasn't joking. It was a joke. "Lyra," Ethan said, testing the name. "An idiom." She nodded once, a precise motion. "My translator struggles with non-literal human subtext. It categorizes 60% of your speech as unnecessary data." Ethan choked on his water. He coughed, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. 60%? You might want to get a refund on that implant. "It is a standard diplomatic issue," Lyra said, watching him cough with detached interest. "I requested you specifically, Ethan Cole. I did not want to leave your compatibility to an algorithm." The admission hung in the air between them. Ethan narrowed his eyes. The playfulness vanished from his face, replaced by the suspicion that had kept him alive through 3 tours of duty. "You requested me?" he asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Why?" "I am a retired grunt living on a disability pension. I am not exactly poster boy material for interspecies relations. There are admirals and senators who would kill to be sitting here." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes seeming to peel back layers of his skin to look at the bone beneath. She opened her mouth to speak, but she stopped. Her gaze flicked to the left, toward the entrance. A drone camera crew was swarming in. They were sleek, floating orbs emblazoned with the Harmony Match logo, followed by a human producer who was frantically gesturing at them. "There they are!" the producer squealed, pointing at Ethan and Lyra. "The first successful cross-species date of the quarter. Get the angle. Capture the romance." The drones descended on their table like a flock of mechanical vultures, lenses whirring and zooming. A spotlight hit them, blindingly bright. Ethan flinched, his hand instinctively twitching toward a sidearm that wasn't there. He hated cameras. He hated the spotlight. He felt like an animal in a zoo exhibit labeled "Recovering Human." Lyra did not flinch. She leaned forward, crossing the distance between them. She did not touch him, but she invaded his personal space with a deliberation that made his breath catch. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin, and he smelled her scent, strange and clean, like rain hitting hot metal. "Smile, Ethan," she said softly, her lips barely moving. "We are being recorded." "I am not smiling for a propaganda reel," Ethan muttered through gritted teeth. Lyra leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper that the microphones couldn't pick up, a sound that vibrated directly against his eardrum. "We are being recorded for more than publicity," she said. Ethan froze. The old soldier mode slammed into place, overriding the awkward date jitters. His pupils dilated, his breathing shallowed. He didn't look around wildly. He kept his eyes on Lyra, but his peripheral vision expanded, scanning the room, reading the reflection in the glass, counting threats. "What do you see?" he whispered back. "3 exits, Lyra murmured, picking up a menu and pretending to read it. 2 are blocked by the camera crew. The kitchen service door is open." He scanned the faces in the crowd. The host was gone. The producer was distracted. Then he saw the waiter. A human male, dressed in the standard Zenith uniform, was weaving through the tables toward them, carrying a silver tray with a bottle of champagne. But the man's walk was wrong. His center of gravity was too low, his steps too silent for someone carrying a heavy tray. And his eyes, they weren't looking at the table. They were locked on the back of Ethan's neck. Ethan's gaze dropped to the tray, beneath the white linen napkin. The shape of the bottle was wrong. There was a metallic glint that wasn't glass, a pressure injector, a micro syringe device, silent, Instant. Heart failure in 30 seconds, diagnosed as natural causes. Lyra saw him see it. Her pupils narrowed, turning into vertical slits. "Stay still," she commanded softly. The waiter was 5 steps away. 4. He raised the tray, his hand slipping under the napkin. Lyra moved her hand beneath the table. She tapped a sequence onto a silver bracelet worn on her wrist. The air around the waiter warped. It was a subtle pulse, a polite distortion that looked like a shimmer of candlelight or a heat haze rising from pavement. It passed through the waiter's tray. The man stumbled. The micro-syringe device suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine and sparked. The waiter yelped, dropping the tray. The champagne bottle shattered on the floor, exploding in a shower of glass and foam. The device clattered to the ground, smoking, looking like nothing more than a broken corkscrew to the untrained eye. The camera crew gasped. The producer yelled something about ruining the shot. Ethan looked at Lyra. She was sitting perfectly still, her hands folded on the table, her expression one of mild concern. She had neutralized an assassin in a crowded room without lifting a finger above the table, without anyone knowing it was her. Ethan felt a cold sweat break out on his spine. He had faced enemy combatants, insurgents, and automated defense turrets, but he had never seen tech like that. She had saved him, yes, but the ease with which she did it terrified him more than the attempt on his life. "Clumsy," Lyra said, her voice loud enough for the cameras. "Perhaps we should skip the champagne." The waiter, clutching his burned hand, scrambled to pick up the debris, shooting a look of pure terror at Lyra before fleeing toward the kitchen. The producer rushed over, apologizing profusely. Ethan waved him off, his voice hard. "Give us a minute," Ethan barked. "No cameras. Back off." The producer, sensing the shift in the veteran's demeanor, signaled the drones to retreat to a respectful distance. The spotlight clicked off, leaving them in the relative intimacy of the ambient lighting. Ethan leaned across the table. His cynicism was gone, replaced by a razor-sharp focus. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice low. "And do not tell me you are a diplomat. Diplomats do not carry EMP generators in their jewelry." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time, the mask slipped. He saw exhaustion in the set of her shoulders, a burden of knowledge that looked heavy enough to crush bone. "I am an envoy," Lyra said, "but my portfolio includes stability operations. You just fried a man's hardware. That wasn't stability. That was counter-ops." Lyra glanced at the shattered glass on the floor. "A faction within the coalition government, my people and yours, is running a program. They are using Harmony Match as a filter. A filter for what? Selection and erasure," she said plainly. "They are identifying individuals who possess specific traits. Resistance to propaganda, combat experience, moral rigidity. People who would be inconvenient for the next phase of integration." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at the other couples. Were they targets too? Or just him? "So this date," he whispered, "it's a trap." "It is a hunting ground," Lyra corrected. "Then why are you here?" Ethan asked. "If you know what this is, why show up? Why sit here and order water with a man who has a target on his back?" Lyra paused. She looked at him, and her expression softened into something that looked like regret. It was a look of someone who hated that the truth was going to hurt. "I am not here for romance." "Ethan," she said, "I was sent to observe, to confirm the list." She leaned in, her violet eyes locking onto his. "But you may be the only person here I can't afford to lose." Ethan stared at her. The words hung there, heavy and inexplicable. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm done," he said.
Так.
I'm done being used by systems. I'm done being a file on someone's desk. I'm leaving. He stood up. He expected her to grab his arm to try and stop him physically. She didn't move. Operation Silent Dust, she said. Ethan froze. He stopped breathing. He turned slowly to look at her. The restaurant noise faded into a buzz. That name. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 5 years. It was redacted from every file. It was the mission where he lost his squad. It was the mission that didn't officially exist. What did you say? He asked, his voice barely a rasp. Sector 4, Lyra continued, reciting the details with chilling precision. Coordinates 39 Alpha. You were ordered to retreat. You refused because your transport had civilian refugees on board. You held the line for 6 hours with a fractured rib and an empty magazine. She looked up at him. No civilian should know that. Ethan. No standard military file contains that. The only people who know about Silent Dust are the ones who buried it, and the ones who are digging it up now to use against you. Ethan gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles turned white. The anger that flared in his chest wasn't the hot, flashbang anger of combat. It was the cold, dense anger of betrayal. Who? He asked. Who is doing this? Lyra stood up. She smoothed the front of her coat. Help me find out, she said. Ethan looked at her. He saw the danger in her. He saw the alien geometry of her face, the weaponized grace of her movement. He knew, with absolute certainty, that walking out of this restaurant with her was a terrible idea. It was dangerous. It was likely fatal. But she knew about Silent Dust. She knew the truth he had carried alone in the dark for 5 years. One condition, Ethan said. Name it. No more riddles. You tell me the truth as we go, no matter how ugly it is. Lyra nodded, agreed. She gestured toward the exit. Not the main one, but the side door that led to the maintenance lifts. Ethan adjusted his jacket. He checked the room one last time. The producer was waving at them, thinking they were sneaking off for a romantic stroll. The other patrons were oblivious. He fell in step beside her. They walked through the restaurant, moving through the fake laughter and the holographic lights. Sensors tracked them. He could feel the prickle of surveillance on his neck, but he didn't stop. They reached the heavy service door. Ethan pushed it open, holding it for her. Lyra paused on the threshold. She looked at him, a flicker of dark amusement dancing in her eyes. She still did not touch him, maintaining that precise, careful distance. You humans call this a date, she said, tilting her head toward the dining room they were leaving behind. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What do you call it? Lyra stepped into the shadows of the corridor, the metal door closing behind them. On my world, she said, her voice echoing in the sudden quiet. This is the moment we decide who we die for. Ethan stared at the closed door, then at the alien woman walking into the dark. He let out a short, dry laugh, shook his head, and followed her. The rain in New Seattle did not wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Ethan Cole watched the water streak against the windows of the black sedan Lyra had commandeered, distorting the neon signs of the lower city into bleeding watercolors of pink and electric blue. They were heading into the old quarter, a district where the buildings were still made of brick and mortar rather than carbon glass and optimism. Lyra drove with the same terrifying precision she applied to everything else. Her hands, clad in thin, dark gloves, barely moved on the control yoke, yet the vehicle weaved through the dense maglev traffic like a needle through silk. We are going to the diplomatic enclave, Lyra said, her eyes fixed on the road. Specifically, The Valyrian Lodge. It is sovereign soil. Even the integration office needs a warrant signed by 3 planetary governors to kick down the door. Ethan adjusted his collar, which still felt too tight. You have an embassy inside a condemnable 3-star hotel. It is camouflage. Ethan. We value privacy. They pulled up to the curb of what looked like the Hotel St. Regent, a crumbling edifice from the 21st century with a flickering sign that was missing the letter E. Ethan stepped out into the rain, his instincts screaming that this was a dead end. But the moment he followed Lyra through the revolving brass doors, the smell of damp concrete vanished. The interior was not a hotel lobby. It was a bioluminescent cavern. The walls were not covered in wallpaper, but in a shifting, breathing moss that glowed with a soft amber pulse. The floor was a smooth, obsidian-like material that rippled when stepped on, like walking on the surface of a deep, dark lake. The ceiling was lost in a haze of floating geometric shapes that chimed softly, creating a soundscape that was less like music and more like a heartbeat. Ethan stopped, blinking. He looked at a wall to his left where the moss was currently rearranging itself into the shape of a star map, then dissolving into abstract waves. Subtle, Ethan deadpanned. I like how you guys really leaned into the "we are definitely not aliens" vibe. It is very convincing. If the goal is to blend in, you are trying a little too hard. Lyra stopped and turned to him. The amber light caught the sharp angles of her face, softening the severity of her expression. The corner of her mouth twitched upward, a microscopic movement that on anyone else would have been a spasm. But on her, it was an event. We find human architecture static, she said, her voice dry. It is depressing to stare at a wall that never changes its mind. It is called structural integrity. Lyra, it keeps the roof from falling on your head. She made a sound that might have been a scoff. Come, we have work to do. She led him to a private lift that whisked them up 20 floors in 3 seconds. The room she brought him to was vast, sparse, and dominated by a circular table in the center that projected a holographic interface. The walls here were calmer, shifting in slow, oceanic blues. Lyra tossed her coat onto a floating chair and turned to face him. Her posture shifted from the fluid grace of the restaurant to the rigid stance of a briefing officer. "Sit," she commanded. "We need to establish parameters before we proceed." Ethan sat, the chair molded to his spine instantly, which was both comfortable and unsettling. "Lay it out," he said. Lyra began to pace, her boots making no sound on the floor. Parameter 1, the political landscape is a powder keg. You know the history, but you do not know the reality. Earth joined the coalition 5 years ago after the border war decimated both our fleets. The peace treaty was signed with a pen in one hand and a detonator in the other. Ethan nodded. I was there. I remember the ceasefire. It felt like a pause, not an end. Correct, Lyra said. There are extremists on both sides, human isolationists and alien purists, who believe integration is a biological and cultural contaminant. They want the coalition to collapse so they can restart the war and finish what they started. Harmony matches the coalition's answer. It is the symbolic cornerstone. If humans and aliens can mate, bond, and coexist intimately, the argument for war evaporates. So they are targeting the program to prove we cannot mix. Ethan concluded. Worse, Lyra said, stopping her pace to look at him. They are using the program to find the people who would actually make integration work and removing them. Which brings us to parameter 2. My role. You are an envoy, Ethan said. I am a cleaner, Lyra corrected. My house specializes in removal of obstacles. I was sent here to ensure the treaty holds. Officially, I am a diplomat. Unofficially, I am trained for extraction, sabotage, and kinetic negotiation. Kinetic negotiation, Ethan repeated. Is that what you call frying a waiter's nervous system? He would have recovered in an hour, Lyra said dismissively. Now, parameter 3. The rules of our engagement. She stepped closer to the table, leaning her hands on the edge, her violet eyes bored into his. Rule 1. No touching. Ethan blinked. I wasn't planning on it. I respect personal space. It is not about manners. Ethan, it is biology. My species, the Ethelguard, possesses a dermal neurolink. Extended physical contact with a compatible partner initiates a bonding sequence. It creates a psycho-empathic bridge. If you touch me skin to skin for more than a few seconds, you will start feeling what I feel, and I will feel you. Ethan stared at her gloved hands. That sounds invasive. It is permanent, Lyra said, her voice dropping. It is how we choose mates. It is how we build armies. We do not date. We bind. If that happens, you become a liability I cannot discard. So, no touching unless life-critical. Understood, Ethan said, shifting in his chair. No touching. What is rule 2? No lies, Lyra said. My translator has a polygraph heuristic, but it is clumsy. I need you to be honest. If we are going to survive a conspiracy that spans 3 star systems, I cannot waste processing power guessing if you are hiding something. Fine, Ethan said. I refuse half-truths anyway. They take too much energy to remember. Rule 3. No hero moves, Lyra said sharply. You are a soldier. I read your file. You have a tendency to place yourself between the hammer and the anvil. Do not do that. If a grenade drops, you run. You do not dive on it. I am the asset. You are the guide. We survive together, or we die stupidly. Ethan smirked. No hero moves. Got it. Though I feel like we are going to break that one by lunch. Lyra looked at him, and for a second, the oceanic blue of the walls seemed to darken, reflecting her mood. Do not joke about survival. Ethan, I joke to survive. Lyra, it is the only way to keep the screaming inside my head quiet. Lyra held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded once, accepting the answer. She tapped the holographic table. Let us look at your profile. The air above the table shimmered, resolving into a 3-dimensional display of Ethan's Harmony Match dossier. It was terrifyingly detailed. Medical records, service history, psychological evaluations, even a list of his preferred whiskey brands. Lyra's fingers danced in the air, manipulating the data streams. Here, she said, pointing to a timestamp. Your profile was accessed and altered 4 hours before our date. Ethan squinted at the floating text. Rerouted through server node Alpha 9. That is a classified network. Lyra reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a device that looked like a jagged shard of crystal. It pulsed with a faint inner light. What is that? Ethan asked. A memory prism, Lyra explained. Human digital forensics looks for fingerprints, codes, IP addresses. Those can be scrubbed. This device does not look for data. It replays the emotional residue of the user who interacted with the interface. Emotional residue? Ethan asked. Skeptical. You are telling me computers have feelings? No, Lyra said, placing the crystal on the table's surface. But sentient beings project psionic intent when they focus. Intense emotion leaves a signature on the quantum structure of the hardware. Watch. The crystal hummed. A beam of refracted light shot up through the hologram, distorting the blue data stream. The light was not a single color, it was a swirling, violent cloud of jagged red and suffocating black. Ethan recoiled slightly. The colors felt heavy. Looking at them made his chest tight, giving him a sudden headache. "What am I looking at?" he whispered. "Rage," Lyra said softly, her face illuminated by the crimson glow. "Cold, calculated rage, and fear. See the black veins? That is the fear of exposure. The person who altered your file was not just doing a job. They hated you, or they hated what you represent." The colors twisted, forming a vague, ghostly silhouette of a hand manipulating the data. It wasn't a picture, but an impression of a hand, rigid, controlling, shaking with suppressed energy. Lyra adjusted the prism. The residue sharpened. A symbol flared briefly in the chaotic light, a stylized golden hawk clutching an olive branch. But the branch was broken. "That crest," Ethan said, pointing. "That is the seal of the Earth Integration Office." Lyra swept the crystal off the table, and the violent colors vanished, leaving the room peaceful again. "Someone with high-level clearance at the Integration Office marked you for deletion," Lyra said. "We need to pay them a visit." The Earth Integration Office was a fortress of glass and steel located in the government sector. It was designed to look transparent and welcoming. But Ethan knew better. The transparency was one way. They stood in the atrium, which was crowded with petitioners, lobbyists, and nervous couples. Ethan wore his suit. Lyra had swapped her coat for a formal diplomatic sash that commanded immediate deference from the receptionist. They were granted an audience with Administrator Silas Vance, the regional director of the Harmony Match program. Vance was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a boardroom. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He sat behind a desk that was large enough to land a shuttle on. 2 guards stood by the door. They were human, but they stood with a stillness that Ethan recognized. It was not discipline, it was calibration. They breathed in sync. They blinked in sync. "Ambassador Vey," Vance said, rising smoothly, "an honor, and Mr. Cole. I understand there was a disturbance at the Zenith last night." "A minor technical glitch," Lyra said, her voice smooth as silk. "We are here to discuss a clerical error in Mr. Cole's file." Vance sat down, steepling his fingers. "A clerical error? Our algorithms are 99% accurate." Ethan leaned forward. "It is the 1% that gets you killed." "Vance, my file was routed through a classified server." "Why?" Vance's smile didn't waver. "Standard security vetting for high-profile matches. You are a war hero, Mr. Cole. We have to be careful." Ethan felt the hair on his neck stand up. The term war hero sounded like an insult coming from this man. He glanced at the guards. Their hands were hovering near their holsters, not touching, but hovering, waiting. Lyra stepped forward. She was playing the role of the haughty alien aristocrat perfectly. "Administrator," she said, her voice dripping with formal disdain. "We are not here for excuses. We are here for transparency. If there is a rot in your department, it is best we excised it before it spreads." Vance's eyes narrowed slightly. "Rot is a strong word. Ambassador." Lyra paused. She looked at Ethan, then back at Vance. She seemed to be searching for a specific human phrase to emphasize her point. "I believe the human expression is relevant here," she said, her chin high. "We must not let you screw the pooch in public office." Silence. Absolute, vacuum-sealed silence filled the room. Ethan froze. He stared at Lyra. Vance stared at Lyra. The guards even seemed to break their synchronization for a microsecond to exchange a confused glance. Vance's face turned a shade of puce. "Excuse me?" Ethan let out a sound that was half cough, half strangled animal noise. He slapped a hand over his mouth, turning away to hide the fact that he was biting his lip so hard it was about to bleed. Lyra looked at Vance, then at Ethan, sensing she had miscalculated the idiom's gravity. "Is that incorrect?" she asked, maintaining her composure. "I meant to imply that we should not allow incompetence to breed." Vance stood up, his professional mask cracking. "Get out, both of you, before I have you detained for diplomatic insult." "We are leaving," Ethan choked out, grabbing Lyra's elbow, carefully avoiding her skin and steering her toward the door. "Thank you for your time. Administrator, lovely office." They marched past the synchronized guards and out into the hallway. Ethan didn't speak until they were in the elevator and the doors slid shut. Then, he collapsed against the wall, sliding down until he was squatting, his shoulders shaking. Lyra looked down at him, annoyed. "Explain. You told the regional director of integration not to have intercourse with a dog." Ethan wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. Lyra frowned. "That is illogical. Why would a dog be involved in administrative duties?" Ethan laughed. It was a rusty, jagged sound, but it was real. It felt like something breaking loose in his chest, shaking off years of dust. Lyra watched him. Her annoyance faded, replaced by a look of curiosity. She watched his face crinkle, watched the way the tension left his jaw. "You are laughing," she noted. "Yeah," Ethan gasped. "I guess I am." "Good," she said softly. "Keep that. You will need it." They spent the next few hours in a safe zone, a quiet park in the upper residential ring where the air was filtered and the grass was real. They needed to regroup and analyze the data Lyra had swiped from Vance's terminal during the distraction of her idiom failure. They sat on a bench overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. Ethan stretched his legs out. He felt tired, but not the heavy, depressive exhaustion he was used to. This was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from doing something. "You know," he said, looking at the city. "I hate it when they call me a hero." Lyra didn't look at him. She was watching a group of children playing near a fountain, human and alien kids chasing a holographic butterfly. "Why?" she asked. "You saved lives." "I saved lives because I was terrified," Ethan said. "I didn't hold the line at Sector 4 because I was brave. I did it because there was nowhere to run. I wake up every morning and I still hear the artillery. I still smell the ozone. Heroes are supposed to be shiny. I am just leftover." Lyra turned to him. She studied his face, the lines around his eyes, the jagged scar that ran from his ear to his collarbone. Her gaze wasn't clinical. It was intense, lingering on the imperfections as if they were text she was trying to read. "On my world," she said quietly, "we mend broken pottery with gold. We believe the break is part of the history, not something to hide." Ethan looked at her. Her violet eyes were luminous in the twilight. "You are beautiful, Lyra," he said, the words slipping out before he could check them. "But you are tired too. I can see it." Lyra looked away, her mask slipping again. "Beauty is a tool," she said, her voice brittle. "In diplomacy, I am a decoration. I enter a room, and they look at the exotic alien woman. They underestimate me. They lower their guards. I use my face to buy secrets. No one asks the weapon if it is tired of being fired." She looked back at him, her voice lowered, becoming intimate. "But you saw the weapon last night, and you didn't run." Ethan felt a pull. It was magnetic. The invisible wire between them hummed, vibrating with a frequency that made his fingertips tingle. He wanted to reach out, He wanted to brush a stray lock of silver hair from her face. He stayed still. "We are a pair of broken things, aren't we?" he said softly. Lyra almost smiled again, that ghost of an expression that haunted her lips. "Perhaps," she said. "Or perhaps we are just the only ones who fit together." The moment stretched, fragile and heavy. Then, Lyra's wristcom beeped, shattering the mood. She looked at the display and her eyes widened. "The data from Vance's terminal has finished decrypting," she said, her voice snapping back to professional coldness. "Look at this." She projected a small hologram from her wrist. It was a map of the city, overlaid with thousands of red dots. "Harmony Match isn't just pairing couples," she said, the horror dawning in her tone. "It is building a predictive model. Look at the data points. They are tracking psychographic profiles, resistance to authority, skepticism of the government, combat proficiency. They aren't matchmaking," Ethan realized. "They are list-making. They are identifying everyone who would fight back against a coup." Lyra tapped a name at the bottom of the file. "The Architect." The name flashed. "High Strategist Corian Thel." Ethan swore. "Thel? He is a saint. He wrote the Unity Accords, that he is the face of the coalition. He is also the one running the stability operations," Lyra said grimly. "He isn't trying to destroy the coalition. He is trying to purify it. He wants a compliant population, human and alien, with all the dissenters removed." Before Ethan could respond, his pocket comm buzzed. It was a priority alert from his home security system. "Movement detected," the mechanical voice said. "Breach in progress." Ethan pulled up the feed. His apartment, his sanctuary, was being torn apart. Men in black tactical gear, no insignias, were ripping up floorboards. One of them placed a data pad on his table. "They are planting evidence," Ethan said, his voice hard. Lyra leaned in. "Look at the screen. That is schematics for a chemical bomb." "They are framing me," Ethan said, standing up. "They are going to say I was planning to attack the integration office. That is why the meeting with Vance was so tense. They were just waiting for me to leave so they could pull the trigger." "We have to go," Lyra said, standing up. "Now." "Where?" "My place is burned. My accounts will be frozen in 10 minutes. Lyra grabbed her coat. "I have a safe house, but we cannot take the roads. The grid is already tracking us." She pointed to a maintenance hatch in the ground near the fountain. "We take the transit tunnels," she said. Ethan groaned. "The sewers?" "Worse," Lyra said. "Experimental gravity tubes. They descended into the Undercity, a maze of pipes and unfinished infrastructure." Lyra led him to a heavy circular airlock. She hacked the keypad in seconds and the door hissed open. Inside, there was no floor. There was just a tube, 10 feet wide, stretching into infinite darkness. The walls were lined with pulsing purple rings. "Jump," Lyra said. "Into the hole?" Ethan asked. "The gravity is reoriented," Lyra said. "Down is forward. Jump." She didn't wait. She stepped into the void and immediately fell sideways, shooting down the tunnel like a bullet. Ethan looked at the hole. He looked at the ladder leading back up. He thought about the tactical team in his apartment. "No hero moves," he muttered, and jumped. The sensation was hideous. His stomach tried to exit through his mouth. Gravity wrenched him 90 degrees, and suddenly he was falling horizontally, the wind rushing past his ears. He flailed, trying to find up, but there was no up. There was only forward speed. He tumbled through the air, screaming a very undignified sound, until he saw Lyra ahead of him. She grabbed a rung on the wall and swung herself into a deceleration alcove. Ethan tried to copy her, missed the rung, and slammed into a pile of foam netting at the end of the tube. He groaned, rolling onto his back. The world was spinning. Lyra stood over him, looking unruffled, graceful, she noted. Ethan sat up, swallowing hard to keep his lunch down. "I think I left my dignity back at the entrance," he wheezed. "Also, my stomach is currently in my throat. Is that normal?" Lyra looked at him, disheveled, pale, and complaining about his stomach while being hunted by a shadow government. And then it happened. Lyra laughed. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a sharp, surprised sound, like a bell ringing in a quiet room. It was real. Her eyes crinkled and her posture relaxed. "You humans are so fragile," she said, offering a hand, then pulling it back, remembering the rule. Ethan looked at her, stunned by the sound. He forgot about the nausea. "Worth it," he said, grinning weakly. The safe house was a small, dusty apartment in an abandoned sector of the industrial district. It smelled of stale air and old coolant. It was barely a room, just a cot, a table, and a single window covered in blackout shades. They collapsed into the space, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving behind the heavy ache of exhaustion. Lyra sat on the edge of the cot. She looked drained. The glow of her skin was dimming. She began to unbuckle her diplomatic sash, tossing it onto the table. Then, she reached for her left glove. She peeled the fabric back slowly. Ethan watched, mesmerized. Her hand was not just gray skin, it was a canvas of shifting light. Bioluminescent patterns swirled beneath the surface, tracing the lines of her veins in soft, rhythmic pulses of violet and silver. It was hypnotic. It looked like looking into a nebula. Lyra flexed her fingers, wincing slightly. "The distortion field takes a toll," she whispered. "My energy reserves are low." She swayed, her eyes fluttering shut. She tipped sideways, gravity taking her. Ethan moved without thinking. He lunged forward, his hand reaching out to steady her shoulder. His fingers hovered an inch from her skin. He felt the heat radiating from her, a physical force. He smelled the rain and metal scent. He saw the intricate, beautiful patterns on her skin pulsing faster as his hand got close, reacting to his presence like a flower opening to the sun. He froze. Rule number 1. He pulled his hand back, clenching it into a fist. Lyra's eyes opened. She stabilized herself, catching her weight on the mattress. She looked at his fist, then up at his face. Her eyes were wide, dark, and vulnerable. "You stopped yourself," she whispered. Her voice was rough, stripped of all the diplomatic polish. Ethan swallowed. The air between them was so thick it felt like water. "Yeah," he said. "Most don't," Lyra said. "Most see the light and they want to touch, they want to take." She looked at her own hand, then back at him. Ethan answered quietly, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "I'm not most." Lyra stared at him. For a long, dangerous moment, neither of them moved. The distance between them was 6 inches, but it felt like a canyon they were both terrified to bridge and terrified not to. She exhaled, a shaky breath. "No," she said softly. "You are not." She lay back on the cot, closing her eyes, but she turned her hand palm up, exposing the vulnerable, glowing patterns to him. It was an offering of trust. Ethan sat on the floor, his back against the wall, watching over her. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. The hope in the room was loud enough to drown out the war in his head. The holographic projection hovering over the rusted table in the safe house flickered with the jagged, nervous energy of a bad signal. Ethan Cole sat on a crate, his elbows resting on his knees, watching his own face rotate in the blue light. The image was grainy, pulled from an old service file, but the caption underneath was sharp and damning. Ethan Cole, wanted for acts of domestic terror, armed and extremely dangerous. He looked tired in the photo. He looked even more tired in reality. Lyra Vey stood by the window, peering through a crack in the blackout shade. On the screen, her image appeared next to his. But the caption was different. Missing person. Diplomat Lyra Vey feared abducted by radical elements. Ethan let out a low, bitter sound that was not quite a laugh. So I am the monster, and you are the damsel, Ethan said, gesturing at the hologram. They are writing a fairy tale. Lyra, and fairy tales always end with the monster getting put down. Lyra let the shade snap back into place. She turned, the bioluminescent patterns on her hands pulsing with a dull, agitation-fueled gray. It is cleaner this way, she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the diplomatic cadence she used in public. If I am a victim, my house does not lose face. If I am a co-conspirator, it triggers a political inquest that could freeze trade routes for a decade. Ethan looked at her sharply. You think your people know the truth? Lyra walked to the table and swiped her hand through the hologram, scattering the light. My superiors are pragmatists. Ethan, they know I am not a victim. They know I am off script. But declaring me missing buys them time. If I solve this, I am a hero who escaped captivity. If I die... She stopped. She did not need to finish the sentence. If you die, you are a martyr to fuel the very war we are trying to stop. Ethan finished for her. Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes hard. Politics loves martyrs more than it loves people. Dead symbols are easier to manage. They do not talk back. They do not have opinions. They just inspire useful rage. Ethan stood up, the joints of his knees popping. The realization settled in his gut like cold lead. She was just as expendable as he was. The alien princess and the human grunt, both just variables in an equation someone else was solving. We need those logs, Ethan said. If we can prove Harmony match is rigged, we flip the board. The logs are not on Earth, Lyra said. She tapped her wristcom, projecting a schematic of a massive wheel-shaped structure floating in the black void above the planet. The orbital data vaults are stored on Transit Ring 4. It is a neutral territory hub, high traffic, high security, and technically outside coalition jurisdiction. Ethan studied the schematic. A ring station, that means gravity simulation, checkpoints, and nowhere to run if things go south. Lyra adjusted her gloves, hiding the gray pulse of her skin. Then we better make sure things do not go south. Getting to orbit was surprisingly easy. Cargo shuttles left the industrial sector every hour, and Lyra's encryption keys stolen from Vance's office marked them as priority inspectorate cargo. The hard part was the station itself. Transit Ring 4 was a masterpiece of intimidation disguised as luxury. It was a cinematic maze of glass corridors that offered vertigo-inducing views of the Earth below. A blue marble swirled with white clouds, looking deceptively peaceful. Massive banners of silk and holographic light drifted in the recycled air, advertising everything from luxury star cruisers to colonization insurance. The population was a chaotic mix of tourists, traders, and diplomats. Security drones, silent and shaped like sleek silver teardrops, hovered above the crowds, their sensors sweeping back and forth like accusatory eyes. Ethan felt entirely out of his depth. On the ground, he knew the terrain. He knew how gravity worked. Here, everything felt slippery. The artificial gravity was set to standard coalition norms, which was about 10% lighter than Earth's pull. It made his stride bouncy and awkward. He tried to dodge a floating luggage cart and overcompensated. launching himself shoulder first into a tall, spindly creature wearing formal robes. The dignitary spun slowly in midair, looking offended. "Watch your vector." "Groundwalker," the dignitary hissed. "Sorry," Ethan muttered, grabbing a handrail to anchor himself. "My magnetic boots are in the shop." Lyra glided past him, moving with an elegance that defied physics. She looked like she had been born in zero-G. She paused, waiting for him to untangle himself from the handrail. "Graceful," she murmured, her face perfectly deadpan. "Very warrior-like." "I am trembling with intimidation." Ethan scowled, adjusting his jacket. "Just lead the way, Your Highness." They moved toward the core of the station, where the data vaults were housed. The crowd thinned as they entered the administrative sectors. Here, the walls were pristine white, and the silence was heavy. Lyra stopped before a security checkpoint. A laser grid blocked the hallway, and 3 armed guards stood behind a blast shield. "This is where it gets difficult," Lyra said softly. Ethan checked the heavy pistol concealed under his jacket, a kinetic slug thrower he had liberated from the safe house. "No shooting. Not unless we have to." Lyra shook her head. "No shooting at all. We walk right past them." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, spherical device that hummed with a frequency on the edge of hearing. "This is a perception dampener," she explained. "It does not make us invisible. That is impossible with thermal sensors. Instead, it bends attention. It broadcasts a psychosomatic signal that tells the observer's brain we are simply uninteresting." "Uninteresting?" Ethan asked. "It tells them we are background noise, like a flickering light bulb or a janitor pushing a cart. The eye sees us, but the brain slides off because it cannot label us as a threat." She activated the sphere. A shimmer of heat haze surrounded them, blurring their edges. "Stay close," Lyra warned. "If you step out of the radius, you will pop into their vision like a flare." They walked toward the checkpoint. Ethan felt every instinct in his body screaming that this was suicide. He locked his eyes on the back of Lyra's neck and forced his feet to move. The guards were looking right at them. One guard was chewing gum. Another was scrolling through a data pad. Ethan held his breath. He was 10 feet away. 5 feet. The guard looking at the data pad glanced up. His eyes swept over Ethan, lingered for a fraction of a second, and then slid away as if Ethan were a piece of furniture. "Clear deck," the guard mumbled into his comms. They passed through the laser grid. The beams washed over them, but the alarms remained silent. Lyra's tech was looping the sensor feed, feeding the system a continuous image of an empty hallway. They turned a corner, and Ethan exhaled, the air rushing out of his lungs. "That," he whispered, "is terrifying." "It is useful," Lyra corrected, deactivating the sphere to conserve battery, but it only works on the bored and the distracted. They reached the vault entrance, a massive circular door made of blast-proof alloy. Lyra connected a decoder spike to the panel. While she worked the lock, Ethan stood guard, his back to the door. He scanned the hallway. It was empty. Too empty. The silence here was different. In the public areas, the silence was heavy with sound-dampening tech. Here, the silence felt predatory. He looked at the patrol routes displayed on the wall terminal. "Something is wrong," Ethan said. Lyra didn't look up. "Almost there." "No, listen," Ethan said, stepping away from the door. "The patrol schedule says a drone should pass here every 4 minutes. It has been 6. Lyra paused. "Are you sure?" "I count time when I am nervous," Ethan said. "And the air cycling vents just shut off. They only do that during a containment breach or an ambush." Lyra finished. The door hissed open. "Get inside," she ordered. They slipped into the vault, a room lined with towering servers that hummed with blue light. Lyra sprinted to the main console, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "We have maybe 2 minutes before they realize we are not background noise," she said. She located the Harmony Match archives. The download bar began to fill. Ethan watched the door, his weapon drawn. "The file is massive," Lyra said, her eyes widening as she scanned the metadata. "Ethan, look at this." Ethan glanced at the screen. A list of names scrolled by, thousands of them. "It is not just soldiers," Lyra said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Look, journalists who criticize the border tax, alien reformists who advocate for shared technology, cross-species couples who have applied for marriage licenses." Ethan saw a name he recognized, a woman from his support group who had started dating a Valerian medic. She was marked priority removal. "They are clearing the board," Ethan said. "They are not just targeting threats, they are targeting the glue. Anyone who actually makes this coalition work is on that list." Lyra pulled up a subroutine attached to the file. It was a command script labeled Operation Fractured Glass. She read it, and her face went the color of ash. "It is worse than a purge," she whispered. "They are planning a catalyst, a staged terrorist event." "Where?" Ethan asked. The file was encrypted, but the header was visible. "Target, Unity Gala, Earth surface, casualties, maximum visibility." "They are going to blow up the gala," Ethan realized, "and they are going to blame it on the integration movement. They will say we did it, that aliens and humans can't coexist without violence." The download chimed complete. Lyra yanked the drive. "We have the proof," she said. "Now we just have to—" The lights in the vault turned red. A siren began to wail, a low, bone-shaking thrum that vibrated the floor plates. "They know," Ethan said. "Run!" They sprinted out of the vault and into the maintenance corridors, the guts of the station where the pipes were exposed and the air smelled of ozone and recycled water. Ethan led the way, his memory of the station schematics guiding them through the labyrinth. They ducked under steam pipes and vaulted over conduit bundles. They stopped in a narrow junction to catch their breath. The red emergency lights bathed them in the color of blood. Lyra leaned against the wall, her chest heaving. She looked at the data drive in her hand, and suddenly, her composure shattered. Her hand shook, not a tremor but a violent spasm. She slammed her fist against the metal wall, a sound like a gunshot in the tight space. "They are monsters," she hissed. Her voice was unrecognizable, raw, guttural. "My own people signed off on this. I saw the authorization codes, High Council members, people I dined with, people who held my hand at induction ceremonies. They signed death warrants for thousands because they are afraid of losing control." She looked at Ethan, her eyes swimming with fierce, unshed tears. "I believed in it. Ethan, I believed in the mission. I am a fool." Ethan stepped close. He didn't think about the rules, and he didn't think about the Neuralink. He saw a soldier breaking under the weight of a betrayal he knew too well. He stepped into her personal space, blocking out the red lights, the sirens, the station. He became her wall. "Lyra," he said, his voice low and grounding. She looked up at him, her breathing ragged. "You are not a fool," he said. "You are the only thing in this galaxy that is real right now." Lyra stared at him. The rage in her eyes began to shift into something else, something darker, hotter, and infinitely more terrifying. She took a step closer to him. There was no space left. Her chest brushed his jacket. "Ethan," she whispered, "you do not understand. My biology. It reacts to stress. It seeks an anchor." She looked at his mouth. My species bonds through sensory imprinting, she said, the words tumbling out, being near you, fighting with you, trusting you. It is starting a sequence I cannot easily undo. It is not just affection. It is structural. It is rewriting how I breathe. Ethan felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He wanted to touch her. God, he wanted to touch her. He wanted to wrap his hands around her waist and pull her in until there was no air left between them. I know, he said, his voice rough. I feel it too. It terrifies you, she said. Yes, Ethan admitted, because wanting you means I have something to lose again, and I don't think I can survive losing anything else. Lyra's hand hovered near his face. She tilted her head up. Her lips parted. They were a breath apart, a hair's breadth. If he leaned forward 1 inch, he would cross the line. He would initiate the bond. He would be hers, and she would be his. In a way that defied politics and war. The air between them crackled. It was magnetic. It was inevitable. And they both stopped. They froze, paralyzed by the sheer weight of the choice. If they did this now, while they were hunted, while they were bleeding, it might break them both. Lyra squeezed her eyes shut and pulled back. The motion was small, but it felt like she had ripped a bandage off a fresh wound. We can't, she whispered. Not here. Not while we are targets. Ethan exhaled, a sound of pure devastation. He nodded. Not here, he agreed. They stood there for a second, devastated by their own restraint, mourning the moment they had just killed to stay alive. Then, the comms unit on Ethan's belt chirped. Ethan, it was a voice he recognized. Holloway, a mid-level integration officer who had been one of their few contacts on the station.
Okay. I was like, what the hell is happening
Ethan,
right now?
I see your signal in Sector 9. I have a secure dock. Come to me. I can get you out. Ethan grabbed the radio. Holloway, we have the logs. We are hot. I know, Holloway said. Get to Cargo Bay 3. I have a shuttle prepped. Hurry. Ethan looked at Lyra. We have a way out. Lyra nodded, the mask of the envoy sliding back into place, though her eyes were still glassy. Let's go. Cargo Bay 3 was a cavernous hangar filled with shipping containers. At the far end, a small transport shuttle sat with its engines idling. Officer Holloway stood by the ramp, waving them forward. Ethan felt a surge of relief. He broke into a run, Lyra right beside him. Holloway! Ethan shouted. Holloway smiled. It was a sad, apologetic smile. He raised a hand, but not to wave. He pointed. Ethan's instinct screamed ambush, a split second before the trap sprung. Holloway dropped to the ground. Behind him, a squad of station security troops rose from behind the crates. Sorry, Ethan, Holloway shouted over the roar of the engines. They offered me a promotion and safety. I have a family. Ethan skid to a halt, grabbing Lyra's coat and yanking her behind a stack of plasteel crates just as the air filled with the whine of stun rounds. Blue bolts of energy slammed into the crates, showering them with sparks. He sold us, Ethan yelled, checking his weapon. He barely had half a clip. Lyra peered around the edge.
Just watch.
They are flanking us. Suddenly, the gravity in the bay shifted. The security team had control of the local environmental systems. The floor tilted 45 degrees. Ethan and Lyra slid sideways, scrambling for purchase. The crates groaned and began to slide, turning the hangar into a crushing hazard. Move! Lyra shouted. They scrambled up the inclined floor, using the sliding crates as cover. Drones descended from the ceiling, not the polite silver teardrops from the lobby, but ugly, dark combat models. They fired nets made of shimmering blue energy. One of the nets clipped a crate near Ethan's head. The metal instantly frosted over, freezing brittle in seconds. Cryo nets, Ethan cursed. If that hits flesh, it burns like ice. They reached a gantry walkway. Ethan vaulted over the railing. Lyra followed, but her boot slipped on a patch of oil. She stumbled. A drone swooped in, firing a net directly at Ethan's exposed back. Ethan didn't see it.
Widget. I appreciate you.
Lyra did. She didn't think. She threw herself forward, shoving Ethan hard. He sprawled onto the metal grating. The cryonet caught Lyra on her left shoulder and arm.
Hello, Anthony.
She screamed, a high, piercing sound that cut through the noise of the battle. The net wrapped around her upper arm, hissing as the extreme cold bit into her skin. Lyra. Ethan scrambled back to her. She was thrashing, clutching her arm. The bioluminescence in her shoulder had gone dark, deadened by the cold. Ethan grabbed her good arm and hauled her up. He fired 3 shots at the drone, shattering its sensor array. It spun away, smoking.
I appreciate you. What the heck?
"We have to move," he roared.
Thank you so much.
He half carried, half dragged her through a service hatch,
Oh my God.
sealing it behind them. He didn't stop running until they were deep in the lower storage decks, hiding inside an empty shipping container. It was dark inside the container.
There's a lot of cords
Ethan clicked on a small chem light, bathing the space in a sickly green glow. He laid Lyra down on a pile of packing blankets. She was pale, her skin gray and ashy. She was shivering violently.
Hello,
"Let me see,"
Is that what it says?
Ethan said, his
Hello.
hands shaking as he reached for her injured
princess.
arm. The cryonet
Hello.
had dissolved, but the damage was
I need to
done.
post that I'm live.
Her skin looked
I'm really
burned,
bad at that.
blistered and angry. The cold had shocked her nervous system. Lyra's teeth chattered. "Our romantic injury statistics," she stammered, forcing a weak smile.
Okay. Posted it in my Discord.
"What?" Ethan asked, tearing a strip of cloth from his shirt to bind the wound. "I read somewhere," she gasped,
Okay.
"that
first of
couples
all,
who
that's
survive
horrible.
life-threatening injuries together have a higher success rate." Ethan looked at her. Tears pricked his eyes, hot and stinging. He refused to let them fall. He laughed, a choked sound. "You are citing statistics right now. You are unbelievable. I am efficient," she whispered. Ethan cleaned the wound with water from his canteen. She hissed in pain,
Okay.
her back arching. "I'm sorry," Ethan murmured. "I'm sorry. I was the weakness. You took that hit for me." Lyra looked at him. Her violet eyes were hazy with pain, but clear in intent.
At this point, I'm not
"I
even gonna do
calculated
this.
the
I'm
risk,"
just gonna stream.
she said softly.
Hi, Jedi.
"You are the guide. I need you to get us home." Ethan finished the bandage. He sat back, wiping sweat from his forehead. She was stabilizing, but she was still shaking from the thermal shock.
Hi, Breezy.
She reached out with her good hand. "Ethan," she said, "my nervous system. It is in a feedback loop. The pain signals are not stopping." "What do I do?" Ethan asked, panic rising. "I don't know alien physiology." "There is a pressure point," she said, "at the base of the neck, where the spine meets the skull. It forces a
Don't play
reset."
King if you don't.
Ethan moved behind
The thing
her.
is,
He hesitated.
I don't know. I have mixed
"Touch
emotions
it,"
with
she
him.
commanded softly. "Please." Ethan placed his hand on the back of her neck.
There's a ringing
Her
sound?
skin was fever hot, contrary to the ice burn.
I don't hear a ringing sound.
He felt the rapid, frantic pulse of her biology. "Here?" he asked, pressing his thumb against the vertebrae. "Yes,"
Are you good at it? You
she
tripping?
breathed. "Harder." He applied pressure.
When I speak.
Lyra let out a long, shuddering exhale. Her head fell back, resting against his chest. The tension drained out of her body instantly. The contact was clinical, a medical necessity.
Okay, let me see.
But as she leaned against him, and his hand cradled the back of her neck, the air in the
What about now?
container
Does it sound
changed.
better?
It became intimate, charged, undeniable. Ethan could feel the vibration of her voice in his chest when she spoke. He could smell the rain and metal scent of her, sharper now with the tang of ozone. She turned her head slightly, her cheek brushing against his hand. She didn't pull away.
Always issues,
She leaned
guys.
into it.
How about now?
"Better?" he whispered. Yes, she murmured. They stayed like
Better?
that for a minute. Two fugitives in a shipping container, bound by a touch that was saving them both in more ways than one. Then, Lyra sat up slowly.
No.
She was still weak, but the gray in her skin was receding, replaced by a faint, returning glow. "We have the logs," she said, her voice stronger. "We know the plan." Ethan nodded. "The Unity
You guys hear the
Gala.
music?
It is in 12 hours, Lyra said. "If we do not stop it, the coalition falls."
How about now?
Ethan checked his weapon. "We need a ship. Holloway's shuttle is burned." Lyra pointed to a manifest on the wall of the container.
Hi, upstate.
"This container," she said, a
Okay,
smirk touching
so
her
does it
lips.
sound better now?
"It is scheduled for loading onto a cargo hauler bound for Earth in 10 minutes. "We are mailing ourselves home?" Ethan asked. "Essentially." The container lurched. A magnetic crane had latched onto it. "Here we go," Ethan said. He sat next to her, shoulder to shoulder. He didn't move away. Lyra looked at him. "Ethan," she said quietly. "Back there, in the corridor."
I can see
Ethan looked
picking
at her.
something up.
"We crossed a line," she said. "Even without the touch, then we crossed it. I know," Ethan said. "There is no going back," Lyra said. "If we survive this, I am
There's
not
nothing
going
going
back
on,
to being
though.
just an envoy, and you are not going back to being just a veteran." Ethan took her good hand, gloved,
It does show that
safe,
my mic's picking
but
something
held
up
tight.
when I'm not talking.
"I don't want to go back," he said. The container lifted into the air, swinging wildly as it moved toward the airlock. They were heading back to Earth, back to the fire, back to a war they had to stop. But as the darkness swallowed them, Ethan didn't feel the old fear.
Give me 1 second,
He felt the
guys.
terrifying, exhilarating clarity of having something worth fighting for. The landing was not graceful. The cargo container slammed onto the concrete loading dock of the new Seattle peripheral zone with a sound like a thunderclap trapped in a steel box. Inside, Ethan
sound better?
Cole groaned, peeling himself off the floor where he had been bracing Lyra Vey against the impact. "We are alive," Lyra announced, checking the readings on her wristcom. "Though my skeletal integrity suggests we should not do that again." Ethan kicked the latch release.
Yeah, unfortunately,
The door
I
hissed
do wanna
open,
switch mics
revealing the
to somehow
smog-choked twilight of
block that
Earth.
shit out, 'cause you can hear
It was
everything.
raining again,
Can you
a
hear me
thick,
now?
oily drizzle that slicked the pavement.
Better.
They were home, and they were the most wanted people on the planet. Ethan pulled his hood up, scanning the dockyard. Holographic billboards looming over the highway nearby flashed their faces in rotation. His photo was gritty, black and
I
white,
hear it.
captioned
Fuck, these are,
"Domestic
like, really bad,
Terrorist."
'cause
Lyra's was a high-resolution
Carry on.
diplomatic portrait, captioned "Compromised Asset, Approach with Caution."
No, it shows that my mic is
"They
picking
call me
something
a
up, though, when I'm
traitor,"
not even, like, when I
Ethan
don't
muttered,
talk.
checking the charge on his stolen pistol. "And they call you a victim who
Solid,
went
motherfucker.
rogue."
You just gotta hear
Lyra
yourself,
adjusted
like,
her
open your
coat,
stream.
wincing slightly as the movement pulled at her bandaged shoulder. Propaganda requires simple narratives. "Ethan, you are the brute. I am the fallen angel. It fits the play they are writing."
Yeah, there's a ringing.
"We need to get
I don't
off the
know where
street,"
it's coming
Ethan said.
from. And then
"My
you
accounts
muted.
are frozen. My safe houses are
Okay, now
burned.
I'm talking
We have
now.
nowhere to go." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes catching the reflection of a passing neon sign. "Not nowhere," she said. "There is a layer of this city that
Damn,
does
you can
not
hear
show
the
up on
person
government
messaging me, like,
maps.
in her death ghost, hella clear.
The location Lyra led them to was not a bunker or a fortress.
Crazy.
It was a basement level of a sprawling, dilapidated apartment complex in the immigrant district. A place where the architecture was a confused jumble of human brick and alien polymer patches. They knocked on a heavy steel door painted with a fading mural of a two-headed bird. The door slot slid open. A pair of yellow, slit-pupiled eyes stared out. "Password?" a voice rasped. Lyra
Yeah, I
leaned
hear
close.
ringing.
"The soup is cold, but the pot is warm." The eyes widened. There was the sound of 3 heavy locks disengaging, and the door swung open. The smell hit Ethan first. It was not the smell of ozone and fear he had grown used to. It was the smell of roasting spices, turmeric, sulfur salt, blooming cactus root. It was the smell of a kitchen. They stepped into a large, warm, communal space. It looked like an underground cafeteria run by a chaotic genius. Long tables were crowded with families, human, Ethelgard, Krell, Valerian, eating together. Children of 3 different species were chasing a robotic cat under the tables. A human woman was bandaging the scraped knee of a reptilian child while its mother stirred a massive pot of stew. This, Lyra whispered,
Walk.
is the network.
He is sick.
Families who fell through the cracks of the integration treaties.
Does sound better now.
Mixed species couples who refused to hide. A massive figure bustled toward them, wiping hands on a stained apron. It was a Krell matron, 7 feet tall, with scales the color of polished jade and a face that, despite its predatory structure, radiated overwhelming
To
warmth.
be honest.
Lyra, the
Unfortunately.
matron boomed, her voice like grinding gravel. You look terrible. You look like you wrestled a transit shuttle and lost. Auntie Zal, Lyra said,
Well, I mean,
bowing
if
her
there's
head
a
with
sound
genuine
going
respect.
on, I don't know how to
We
fix
need
it,
sanctuary.
So.
Zal looked at Ethan. She sniffed the air near him, her nostrils flaring. And
Yeah, I
this
don't
is
know
the
exactly
human,
what's going on.
the one causing all the trouble on the news feeds? Ethan straightened up. That would be me. Zal laughed, a deep rumbling sound that shook the floorboards. She reached out and slapped Ethan on the shoulder with enough force to nearly dislocate it. Good.
Okay. Let me know if it
Trouble
gets
is
worse.
good. The government is too quiet lately. Quiet means they
Maybe I
are
just wanna
plotting.
talk this
Come,
entire stream.
eat. You look like skeletons.
I'll mute myself. and
She
you guys
led
can
them
just
to a
watch me.
corner table, shoving bowls of thick purple stew into their hands before they could sit. Ethan looked around the room. He saw a human man feeding a spoonful of broth to his Valerian partner, who lacked hands capable of holding the spoon. He saw 2 teenagers, one human, one
Hello,
Ethelgard,
DJ.
huddled over a datapad, sharing headphones.
I
This
didn't
is
say
what
I'm
they are
completely.
afraid
I
of,
said
isn't it?
I feel like
Ethan
I am,
asked
but
quietly,
I haven't
stirring
made
the purple broth.
official decision where I
Lyra
am
nodded,
done with
watching
him.
the room with a look of
I will
longing.
announce it, guys, if
Yes,
I actually do not
the
want to make him
coalition sells
anymore.
unity as a political concept, signatures on treaties, trade agreements, sterile handshakes. But this is biological unity. This is messy. It is kitchens where people share food across biology and laugh at each other's weirdness.
Yeah, I'm still...
Zal returned with a pitcher of
debating.
water. She slammed it down and looked between them, her yellow eyes narrowing. So, she rumbled, are you 2 mated yet? Or are you just radiating sexual tension to keep the room warm?
I haven't even played
Ethan
Street Fighter,
choked
to
on
be
his
honest.
stew.
I might play it a
Lyra
little bit on
stiffened,
my lover list.
her posture becoming instantly diplomatic. Auntie Zal, we are professional partners engaged in a high-stakes intelligence operation. Zal snorted smoke from her nostrils. Professional partners. I have seen mating dances with less heat than you 2 staring at each other. Eat your soup. You will need the energy for the revolution, or for the bedroom, whichever comes first. She waddled away, shouting at a child to stop climbing the ventilation ducts. Ethan wiped his mouth, his face burning.
Me just using
She is
that.
direct. She is perceptive, Lyra murmured, staring into her bowl. After eating, they set up a command post in a small back room Zal provided. They connected the data drive they had stolen
I'm
from
always
the
bringing
orbital
power.
station to Zal's cobbled-together server. Lyra worked the interface while Ethan stood guard, watching the families in the main room through the cracked door. Ethan, Lyra said, her voice tight. Come look at this. Ethan walked over. The holographic display showed the internal schematics of the Harmony Match algorithm. We knew they were tracking political dissidents, Lyra said. But there is a hidden layer to the data collection. Look at the biofeedback metrics. Ethan squinted at the scrolling numbers. Heart rate variability, Pupil dilation, hormonal resonance. What is this? They aren't just matching people, Lyra said, tracing the line of code. They are testing for genuine biological bonding. The algorithm flags couples who show signs of deep psychoempathic connection, the kind that transcends cultural programming. Ethan felt a chill. So our date. It was a stress test, Lyra realized. They paired us because on paper, we are opposites. A war-scarred human isolationist and a high-caste alien diplomat. They wanted to see if we would reject each other. And instead, Ethan asked. The display flashed red. Subject Cole and Subject Vey. Resonance detected, threat level high. Instead, we bonded, Lyra whispered, and that terrified them. Because if a soldier and an envoy can bridge the gap, the war narrative falls apart. She swiped the screen, bringing up a map of the Earth. There is more, she said. The conspirators are not just erasing people. They are weaponizing the infrastructure. My people, the Ethel Guard, seeded Earth with resonance anchors 5 years ago. They are massive subterranean stabilizers meant to help our technology function in Earth's gravity. Ethan nodded. I have seen them. Big obsidian obelisks. They hum. They are supposed to be passive, Lyra said, but the encrypted file shows a command sequence sent to the desert array. The conspirators are going to overload the anchors. Overload them? What happens then? Lyra's face was grim. It creates a feedback loop, a gravity storm. It will look like an alien attack, a sudden violent betrayal of physics that will tear the Unity Gala venue apart and kill thousands. A beautiful disaster to prove that alien technology is unsafe and that we are monsters. Where is the desert array? Ethan asked. Lyra pointed to a desolate stretch of the Mojave. Here. They stole an off-road rover from the network's garage, a battered, rust-colored beast that looked like a tank stripped of its gun. They drove through the night, leaving the rain-slicked city for the dry, open silence of the desert. As they approached the coordinates, the landscape changed. The sand here wasn't yellow or red. It was gray, glittering like crushed ash under the rover's headlights. The air tasted metallic. We are close to the anchors, Lyra said.
Dude, I'm down to
the background radiation is rising. Suddenly, the rover's sensors screamed. Incoming! Ethan shouted, slamming the wheel to the left. A drone, black, silent, and sleek as a shark, skimmed over the dune, firing a concussive blast that kicked up a wall of sand. The rover fishtailed, its tires spinning in the loose ash. They found us, Lyra said, unbuckling her seatbelt. Ethan gunned the engine, driving the rover into the shadow of a canyon wall. Bail out, he ordered.
It's really fun.
They leaped from the vehicle seconds before a second blast turned it into a fireball. The heat washed over them, scorching the air. They rolled down the dune, sliding in the glittery ash. Ethan came up in a crouch, his pistol drawn. Lyra was already moving, her coat flaring behind her like wings. 3 Black Ops soldiers crested the dune. They wore environmental suits that made them look faceless and insectoid. Ethan didn't wait. He fired 2 suppression shots, forcing them to scatter. Move to the rocks, he yelled. The firefight was chaotic. The sand made footing impossible for normal combat. But Lyra moved with a lethal elegance that defied the terrain. She didn't run. She flowed. She used the shifting sand to slide under a soldier's guard, disarming him with a precise strike to the wrist and a distortion pulse from her glove that sent him flying backward. Ethan used the old tactics. He used the terrain. He flanked. He drew fire to give Lyra openings. They fought not as 2 individuals, but as a single unit. When Ethan reloaded, Lyra covered him. When Lyra moved, Ethan suppressed the threat. It was a dance of violence, perfectly synchronized. They pushed the squad back, disappearing into the labyrinth of sandstone
No,
formations
Fortnite.
known as the Whispering Spires. They lost the pursuit team in a sandstorm that kicked up an hour later. They sought shelter in the ruins of an old pre-war observatory perched on a cliff edge. The dome was cracked open like an eggshell, exposing the interior to the cold, star-dusted sky. Inside, it was quiet. The wind howled outside, but the thick stone walls held the silence. They sat on the floor, leaning against a rusted telescope mount. They were covered in gray ash, breathing hard, the adrenaline slowly draining away to leave a raw, vibrating exhaustion. Ethan looked at Lyra. She was wiping ash from her cheek. Her silver hair was messy, tangles of it falling across her eyes. No, she looked wild. She looked alive.
There you go.
"You are good in a fight," Ethan said, breaking the silence. Lyra looked at him. "You lead well. You anticipate the flow of
Lola?
battle before it happens."
I like Lola.
She looked down at her hands. The bioluminescence was pulsing steadily now, a soft, rhythmic blue. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was different. The formal barrier was gone. "Yeah?" "Back there, in the sand. When that soldier had a bead on me, you stepped into the line of fire. You didn't calculate the odds. You just moved."
Fuck!
Ethan shrugged, wincing as his bruised ribs protested. "Bad habit." "No," Lyra said. She turned to face him fully, tucking her legs beneath her. "It is not a habit. It is a choice." She looked at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "I feel alive around you, Ethan, in a way that scares me. My life has been protocols, treaties, strategic smiles. I have been dead for decades, just a walking function of the state. But with you, I feel the air in my lungs. I feel the bruise on my shoulder. I feel..."
Why,
Hunger.
brother?
Ethan stared at her. The moonlight filtering through the cracked dome turned her skin into polished slate. "Hunger?" he asked hoarsely. Lyra nodded. "And it is no longer strategic." She shifted, inching closer across the dusty floor. The distance between
So
them
make you
shrank.
pull up on Tekken or
"My
where?
species,"
Where are you trying to
she
be?
whispered. "When we bond, it is usually arranged.
Where are you trying to
It is
be?
cold. It is for lineage and political gain. But my instincts right now, they are singing. They are screaming like a warning siren. They want to be near you. They want to know you." Ethan felt his heart hammering against his ribs, louder than the wind outside. "I'm scared too." "Lyra," he admitted. "I spent 5 years trying to feel nothing because feeling things hurts. But looking at
For
you,
the follow.
it hurts. And I don't want it to stop." Lyra stopped a foot away from him. She didn't reach out. She didn't grab him. She looked him in the eye, searching for something. "May I come closer?" she asked. It was a request, a check-in, a recognition that what they were about to do was dangerous for both of them. Ethan looked at her. He saw the alien, the diplomat,
It was nice
the
meeting
warrior.
you. Hopefully you
He
get
saw
to
the
go
woman
to,
who had saved his
more
life in a
stuff.
restaurant and fried a waiter's nervous system. "Yes," he said. Lyra closed the gap. She didn't kiss him.
Gore?
Not yet. She moved
Where's the
into his
rank? I don't know
space,
why it always
pressing her
shows that rank.
forehead
That's not my
against his.
rank.
Her hands came up to rest on his chest,
They want
over
me
the
to
thick
kill.
fabric of his jacket, still respecting the rule, but barely.
Say fuck it.
They breathed together, in the dark, in the ruins, surrounded by enemies. The intensity wasn't
Also,
in the
where fuck have
touch.
you been, Gort?
It was in the
Hello?
restraint breaking. It was two lonely people finally
No,
putting
that-
down
it just
their
shows
armor.
that. I don't know why.
"I am here," Ethan whispered against her skin. "I am not leaving." Lyra let out a shuddering breath. "That is a vow. Ethan Cole. On my world.
Not touching Tekken,
That carries weight.
honestly.
Let it weigh," Ethan
I
said.
feel it.
"I can carry
I
it."
don't blame you.
They stayed like that for a long time, the cold wind whipping around the observatory. but the space between them burning with a heat that had nothing to do with fire. Dawn brought clarity, and with it, the mission. They left the observatory and made their way to the resonance facility disguised as a maintenance outpost in the valley below. Getting in was harder than the orbital station. The security here was ancient, alien, and weird. They stood before a massive door covered in shifting geometric puzzles that required harmonic humming to unlock. Ethan stared at the door. "You have to be kidding me. We have to sing to it?" Lyra looked at the door, analyzing the patterns. It is a tonal lock. It requires a specific frequency of vibration to align the tumblers. Ethan shook his head. "You aliens, why can't you just use a keycard? This is so dramatic." Lyra glanced at him. Deadpan. "We consider drama a form of encryption. If you cannot perform the aria, you do not deserve to enter the server room." She placed her hand on the surface and hummed, a low, resonant note that vibrated in Ethan's teeth. The door groaned and slid open. "Show off," Ethan muttered, following her inside. The control center was a cavern of floating crystals and humming obelisks. In the center, a massive holographic projection showed the Unity Gala venue, a glittering stadium on the coast. Lyra rushed to the console. "Here is the sequence," she said, her fingers flying over the controls. "They are ramping up the energy output of the anchors. At 2000 hours tonight, exactly when the high strategist begins his speech, the anchors will pulse." She pointed to the simulation. "The gravity wave will hit the stadium. It won't just collapse the building. It will create an aurora effect, beautiful lights in the sky, while simultaneously crushing the foundation." "A beautiful disaster," Ethan said, sickened. Lyra tried to input the kill command. The console flashed red. Access denied. Biometric signature required. High strategist Thel. She slammed her fist on the console. "It is hard locked. We cannot shut it down remotely. We need Thel's physical biometric signature, his hand, or his retinal pattern." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "He is going to be at the gala, surrounded by
No
guards."
Wi-Fi.
"Then we have to go to the gala," Lyra said. "We have to confront him."
Agent Mooseman.
"Publicly?
The discovery
While we are
process for
fugitives?"
different
Ethan asked.
archetypes
"We
of
won't get within a
characters
mile of the
before
perimeter."
starting a game.
Lyra turned to him.
Am I-
"We need a distraction. We need to shift the narrative.
I do. I don't
Right
know.
now,
Are you talking
the
about,
public
like,
thinks we are
maybe?
monsters, that we need to show them we are just
I do think I want to
people." Ethan looked at the comms array on the wall.
break from King. Maybe I don't know.
"Record it," he said. "What?" "Record a message. Send it out on every frequency we can hack."
Okay.
Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She set up the feed. Ethan stood in front of the camera pickup. He didn't clean the ash off his face. He didn't fix his jacket. He looked into the lens, tired, scarred, and completely done with lying.
Fuck! I literally
"Ready,"
put down.
Lyra said.
It's okay.
Ethan took a breath.
It's okay.
"My name is Ethan Cole," he began.
Oh my god, it took
His
a video.
voice was raspy. "I am a retired sergeant. I am not a terrorist. The woman with me is not a traitor. We are just two people who went on a date that wasn't supposed to work."
Okay.
He looked down, then back at the lens. "They told you that unity is dangerous. They told you that we can't trust them, and they can't trust us. They are lying.
Oh no.
The people running this war are the ones afraid of peace.
Okay.
They are
Block,
afraid because
block.
peace
What am I
means
doing?
they lose control." He leaned in. "Real courage isn't fighting a war you are told to fight. Real courage is protecting the future even when it scares you. Don't let them choose your enemies for you." He cut the feed. Lyra uploaded it. It bounced through the network's servers and hit the public mesh. "It won't be enough to clear us," Ethan said. "No," Lyra agreed, "but it might be enough to make the guards
Holy
hesitate."
Shit.
Suddenly, Lyra's personal comm unit chimed, a high-priority alert. She looked at the message, and her face went pale. "What is it?" Ethan asked. "It is a direct order from the Ethelgard High Council," she whispered. "They have seen the news feeds. They are ordering me to return to the homeworld immediately for debriefing and reconditioning. If I do not comply within 1 hour, I will be declared rogue." Rogue? It means I am stripped of my house, my name, and my citizenship. I will be stateless. Anyone can hunt me. She stared at the delete button. Her thumb trembled. Ethan watched her. He didn't speak. He knew he couldn't make this choice for her. Lyra looked up at him. Her eyes were wet. "If I go back," she said softly, "I become a story, a tragic diplomat who lost her way. They will rewrite me." She looked at the message again. "If I stay," she said, looking at Ethan,
It's okay.
"I become your problem,
It's okay.
a fugitive with no home and a bounty on her head." Ethan stepped closer. He took her hand, the gloved one, and held it tight. "Be my choice."
I don't care. I need this matchup.
"Lyra,"
Fine.
he said firmly. "Not my problem." Lyra let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years.
Dude, I know.
She
we're
pressed her
having
thumb
issues with
down.
my mic.
Message
I
deleted.
know.
She looked at him,
I don't know.
a
what the
small,
issue
ferocious smile touching her lips. "Then let's go crash a party." They turned toward the exit. The Unity Gala was waiting. It was either going to be their salvation or the spark that burned the world down. But as they walked out into the
Hello,
blinding
Liv.
desert sun,
I will try to
They
fix
walked
it
together.
after this game. If
the
it's
spire of
still,
tides rose from the coastline like a shard of crystallized ambition, a kilometer-high needle of glass and white composite that pierced the smog layer to find the clear starlight above. Tonight, it was not just a building. It was a beacon. Holographic auroras, sheets of shimmering green and violet light, cascaded down its sides, washing the surrounding city in a spectral glow that was designed to be breathtaking. To Ethan Cole, it looked like camouflage. He stood in the shadow of a maglev pillar 3 blocks away, adjusting the cuffs of a tuxedo that had been tailored for a dead man. The suit, procured by Auntie Zol's network, smelled faintly of mothballs and old money. "It is too bright," Ethan muttered, squinting at the venue. "They are using the light to blind the sensors." Beside him, Lyra Vey smoothed the fabric of her gown. It was a midnight blue garment that moved like liquid mercury, high-collared and long-sleeved to hide the bandages on her shoulder and the bioluminescent pulse of her skin, which was currently beating with a fast, nervous rhythm. "It is theater," Lyra said, her voice tight. "The auroras distract the eye. The loud music masks the hum of the security grid. The entire event is a magic trick designed to make people look up in awe while the ground is pulled out from under them." She checked the small clutch purse in her hand. It contained no cosmetics, only a high-frequency jamming spike in the data drive with the evidence that could topple the coalition government. "Are you ready?" she asked, looking up at him. Ethan touched the earpiece hidden in his canal. The feed from the network was crackling with chatter, resistance members monitoring police frequencies, mixed species families watching from safe houses, waiting for the signal. "I am ready to stop running," Ethan said. "Then take my arm,"
My fault.
Lyra said, "and try to look like you adore
I
me,
think I'm just
rather than
overthinking
like
his,
you are scanning the rooftops for snipers."
moves. I don't know.
Ethan offered his arm. "I do adore you, Lyra. That is the only part of this I don't have to fake." Lyra's mask of diplomatic ice slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing a flash of genuine
Yeah, I
warmth.
need combos.
She took
The
his
ones that I
arm,
have, it's
her
like-
grip firm even through the layers of fabric. "Then let us go make a scene." The security at the Unity Gala was overwhelming. It was a layered defense of human Secret Service agents in dark suits, Ethelgard honor guards in ceremonial but functional silver armor. and swarms of silent drones that hovered near the ceiling like metallic insects. Ethan and Lyra moved through the entrance checkpoint using identities forged by the best slicers in the underground. The scanner swept over them, a beam of red light that felt like a physical touch. "Name?" the automated kiosk asked. Lyra leaned forward, her posture radiating an aristocratic boredom that dared the machine to question her. "Baroness Ville of the Third House," she said smoothly. "And my consort, Mr. Thorne." The machine processed. The forged biometrics held, "Welcome, Baroness." The machine chirped, "Enjoy the unity." They stepped into the grand atrium. It was a space so large it possessed its own weather system. Clouds of perfume and dry ice drifted near the vaulted ceiling. 3,000 guests, the elite of two worlds, mingled amidst floating trays of champagne and sculptures made of hard light. Ethan felt the hair on his arms stand up. It wasn't the air conditioning. It was the tension.
Why did I run like that? Why did I run?
Underneath the
why did I run
laughter
like
and the
that?
clinking glasses, there was a vibration in the floor, a low-frequency hum that most people would mistake for the bass of the orchestral music. Ethan knew better. It was the resonance anchors waking up. "They are already cycling the power," Ethan whispered, smiling through his teeth at a passing admiral. "Phase 1, Lyra murmured, nodding to a Krell warlord who was trying to eat a canapé without crushing it. "They are building the charge. We have less than 20 minutes before the keynote speech." They moved through the crowd, cutting a path toward the VIP sector. Lyra was the icebreaker. Her presence was so commanding that people instinctively parted to let her through. She wielded her beauty like a riot shield, deflecting questions with sharp smiles and non-committal nods. Ethan played the role of the silent consort, but his eyes were working overtime. He counted the exits. He clocked the patrol patterns of the drones. He noticed that the human waiters were sweating too much and that the exits were being subtly reinforced by heavy-duty blast shutters that were currently retracted. "They are sealing us in," Ethan said softly. "When this starts, nobody leaves." "There," Lyra said, tightening her grip on his arm. On the main stage, bathed in a spotlight that made him look like a descending god, stood High Strategist Corian Thel. Thel was an older human male with a face that had launched 1,000 peace initiatives. He had kind eyes and a voice that sounded like warm gravel. He was shaking hands with an Ethelgard matriarch, laughing as if they were old friends. "He looks like a grandfather," Ethan said, disgust curling in his gut. "He is a butcher," Lyra corrected. Thel approached the microphone. The room went silent. "My friends," Thel began, his voice amplified to fill the atrium. "We stand here tonight on the precipice of history. For 5 years, we have struggled to weave two destinies into one. We have faced skepticism. We have faced hate. But tonight, we prove that unity is not just a dream. It is a necessity." Ethan felt a wave of nausea roll through him. The floor vibration was getting stronger. The liquid in the champagne glasses on a nearby table wasn't just rippling. It was shivering. "He is monologuing," Ethan said. "We need to move." They slipped away from the mesmerized crowd, ducking behind a heavy velvet curtain that led to the backstage corridors.
Are you guys having
The backstage area was a stark contrast to the opulence of the atrium. It was concrete, cables, and cold light. They moved quickly toward the strategist's private prep room, where Lyra's intel said the control node for the gala's systems was located. They turned a corner and found 2 guards blocking the door. Ethelgard Elite. Lyra didn't slow down. She walked straight toward them.
fuck, bro?
"Stand aside," she commanded in her native tongue, her voice vibrating with the authority of a high house. The guards hesitated. They recognized the tone. They recognized the caste markings on her dress. Ambassador? One guard asked, confused. We were told. Lyra raised her hand.
I don't know.
A pulse of distortion energy, focused and sharp, slammed into the guards. It wasn't a lethal blast. It was a sensory overload. The guards grabbed their helmets, staggering as their equilibrium was shattered. Ethan moved in. 2 quick, efficient strikes to the nerve clusters in their necks. The guards crumpled silently. Ethan dragged them into a utility closet while Lyra hacked the door lock. I thought we were doing the non-violent approach. Ethan grunted. We are on a deadline, Lyra said, and I am tired of asking permission. The door slid open. They burst into the room, weapons drawn. High strategist Thel was waiting for them. He sat in a leather chair, swirling a glass of amber liquid. He didn't look surprised. He didn't reach for an alarm. He just smiled, a sad, disappointed expression that made Ethan want to shoot him immediately. You are late, Thel said calmly. I expected you during the appetizers. Lyra stepped forward, the data drive in her hand. We have the logs. Corian, we know about the target lists. We know about the anchors. We know you are staging an attack to seize emergency powers. Thel took a sip of his drink. Of course you know. You are an envoy. You were bred to find secrets. He stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the gala floor. But you misunderstand the goal. Lyra, I don't want power for power's sake. I want stability. The coalition is a mess.
Really?
It is weak. Extremists on both sides are tearing us apart with petty skirmishes. I am going to end the debate. By killing 3,000 people, Ethan demanded, stepping up beside Lyra. By creating a tragedy so horrific that it forces total unification under martial law. Thel said, fear is a better adhesive than hope.
I don't know how.
Sergeant Cole, you know that. You are a soldier. I am not a soldier, Ethan said. Not for you. Thel turned to look at them, his eyes landing on Lyra. Do you know why I chose you, Lyra? Why I altered the algorithm to pair you with him? Lyra froze. Because you are perfect, Thel said softly. You are beautiful. You are dangerous. And you are alien. I needed a symbol of betrayal. When the anchors tear this building apart, the narrative will not just be a malfunction, it will be sabotage. And the face of that sabotage will be the alien seductress who compromised the human war hero. He smiled at Ethan. You are the victim. Sergeant, she is the villain. I wrote a tragedy, and you two fell in love right on cue. Lyra's face went white. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her selection, her feelings, her bond with Ethan. It had all been weaponized before it even began. Phase 1 is complete, Thel said, checking his watch. Enjoy the show. He pressed a button on his desk. The room lurched. It wasn't an explosion. It was a shift in reality. The resonance anchors beneath the foundation pulsed. The gravity in the room tilted sideways. Ethan was thrown against the wall. The glass of amber liquid on the desk didn't spill. It floated upward, forming a perfect sphere before shattering. Thel stepped onto a private lift platform that shielded him in a dampening field. Goodbye. Lyra, you played your part beautifully. The lift shot upward, carrying him toward the roof extraction point. Lyra scrambled to the console Thel had left behind. He locked it out, she shouted over the groaning of the building's steel frame. The sequence is running. The anchors are creating a feedback loop. In 10 minutes, the gravity shear will crush everyone in the atrium into paste. Can we stop it? Ethan yelled, fighting the vertigo. Lyra looked at the readout. Her face was grim. We can't stop it remotely. We have to go to the primary node. It is under the stage. They ran. The journey back to the stage was a nightmare. The building was
How
fighting
does it
them.
sound right now?
Gravity pulses rippled through the corridors like waves on an ocean.
Fuck, bro.
One moment, the floor was down. The next, the wall was down. Ethan's inner ear was screaming, but his veteran instincts took over. He grabbed Lyra's hand, anchoring her as they leaped over a fissure that opened in the concrete floor.
Okay, let me see.
People are
The thing
panicking,
is, I might just
Ethan
have to
shouted.
reset my whole PC.
Through the open doors
I
to
don't
the
know,
atrium,
like,
they
there's
could see the
nothing-
chaos. The
I don't know where
beautiful
else it would be,
auroras
you
had
know?
turned into jagged streaks of red lightning. The guests
I've
were
already
screaming,
unplugged
huddled
cords.
against the walls as the center of the room became a zero-gravity vortex. Debris, tables, glass, food, orbited in a deadly cloud. Ethan saw a group of civilians trapped near a collapsing balcony. "Go to the node," Ethan yelled to Lyra. "I have to help them." "We stick together," Lyra
Nah, I
argued,
wasn't.
stumbling
He
as a
cleaned
gravity
around
wave
it
hit them.
yesterday, so
Ethan
maybe,
grabbed her shoulders.
I don't know.
"You are the only one who can talk to the
Could see the
machine.
cords, but
I am the
let me-
only one who can keep these people
I'll be right
alive.
back.
Go!" Lyra looked at him, agony in her eyes. She nodded once, then turned and sprinted toward the service hatch that led under the stage. Ethan turned toward the crowd. He grabbed a discarded microphone stand, wielding it like a staff. "Move!" he roared, his voice cutting through the panic. "Toward the east exits. The blast shutters are thinner there." He waded into the chaos. A drone, its logic circuits fried by the resonance, swooped down, firing randomly. Ethan smashed it out of the air with the mic stand. He grabbed a frozen Valerian dignitary and shoved him toward the door. "Keep moving, do not look up. Under the stage." Lyra entered the primary node chamber. It was a forest of thick, humming cables connecting to a central obsidian pillar, the master anchor. The air here was thick with static. It tasted like copper and blood. A squad of Black Ops mercenaries guarded the pillar. They were wearing gravity boots anchored to the floor. Lyra didn't slow down. She didn't have time for a duel. She reached into her consciousness, tapping into the bond she had formed with Ethan, the raw, terrified, desperate hope. She channeled that energy into her distortion tech. She didn't just push them, she warped the sound waves in the room. She screamed, and her tech amplified it into a concussive blast that ruptured the eardrums of every mercenary in the room. They fell, writhing. Lyra reached the pillar. The interface was alien, ancient, and angry. She tried to input the override codes. The system rejected them. Biometric mismatch. Thel was right, she whispered. It needs his signature, unless... She looked at her own hands. Her bioluminescence was flaring wildly. She was Ethelgard. She was of the bloodline that built these anchors. She couldn't command it with authority, but she could overwhelm it with resonance. She could bridge the connection with her own nervous system. It would be like grabbing a live power line. It would likely burn out her neural pathways. It would kill her. She looked up at the ceiling, imagining Ethan above her, fighting for strangers. "My life has been a tool," she whispered, tears hot on her face. "Let it be mine, just once." She reached for the exposed core of the anchor. A hand grabbed her wrist. Ethan stood there. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his tuxedo torn. But he was there. "What are you doing?" he demanded, breathless. "I have to become the circuit," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "It is the only way to fold the frequency. It will kill you," Ethan said. He didn't ask. He stated it. Lyra looked at him. "One of us has to pay the price." Ethan looked at the humming core. Then he looked at the data drive in Lyra's other hand.
All right, guys. Let me know if it's
"No,"
how it sounds.
he said firmly. "We don't do martyrs. We do partners." He pointed to the video uplink cables running from the stage above. "I am going to hijack the broadcast," he said.
That doesn't seem like
"I am
it
going
worked,
to
be
show them
honest, 'cause I
everything.
can see it,
The
mic is
lists,
still moving,
the
even
plans,
when I'm not talking.
Thel's face. That won't stop the gravity." Lyra cried. No, Ethan said,
No ringing.
but it buys
That's
you
good.
time.
Anyone
You don't
else?
need to hold the full charge. You just need to redirect it. I will distract the system. Distract the system? How? Ethan grinned. A feral, terrifying smile. I am going to make the entire world look at me. And while the system is trying to process the signal influx, you fold the wave. It is impossible, Lyra said. We are way past impossible. Lyra.
I still have
Ethan
it.
leaned in and
Okay.
kissed her. It was fast, hard, and tasted of blood and ash. Do it, he said. He turned and ran up the stairs to the main stage. Lyra watched him go. She took a breath, closed her eyes, and plunged her hands into the obsidian core. Ethan burst onto the main stage. The podium was swaying. The audience was a
Anyone
screaming sea
else
of chaos.
have the ringing?
He kicked the dead body of a drone off the platform and grabbed the emergency broadcast mic. He jammed the data drive into the transmitter port. Listen to me, Ethan screamed. The screens behind him, giant story-high monitors, flickered. The
Gone
image
for
of the
you.
beautiful auroras
Okay.
vanished. In its place, scrolling lists of names appeared, photos of Thel signing kill orders, schematics of the anchors. The crowd stopped screaming. They stared. That is the kill list, Ethan roared, his voice booming over the speakers. Look at it. Find your names. This isn't a malfunction, it is a purge. High above, in the extraction shuttle hovering over the open roof. Thel watched the monitors. Cut the feed, Thel screamed at his pilot. Kill him! On the stage! Ethan stood his ground as a spotlight hit him. Strategist Thel wants you to believe that we are enemies, Ethan shouted, looking directly into the camera drone. He wants you to believe that she is the monster. He pointed down, toward the floor, toward where Lyra was burning alive to save them. But she is the only reason you are still breathing. Under the stage, Lyra screamed. The energy from the anchor poured into her. It felt like fire. It felt like her veins were turning into lightning. She felt Ethan's voice vibrating in the floor. She felt his belief in her. She didn't fight the energy. She accepted it. She took the chaotic, destructive gravity wave and she twisted it. She applied the geometric precision of her diplomat's mind to the raw power of the machine. Fold, she commanded. On the stage, the air screamed. The gravity wave surged upward. The venue trembled
Let me
like a
know
living
if
thing in
it
pain.
goes away
The glass
or not,
roof
guys.
shattered, but the debris didn't fall. It dissolved. Lyra folded the
freezing
frequency. She turned the kinetic energy into light.
Just let me
The
know.
crushing weight lifted. The nausea vanished. And then, it snowed. Soft, shimmering flakes of hard light drifted down from the ceiling. They glowed with a gentle, healing blue. The terrifying red lightning resolved into a breathtaking, impossible aurora that swirled through the room,
Drop that.
passing through people like ghosts, leaving behind a sensation of warmth. The crowd stood frozen. The terror evaporated, replaced by a stunned collective awe. Ethan looked up at the snow.
Make it stop.
He caught a
The noise
flake in
is-
his hand. It didn't melt. It hummed. She did it, he whispered. The extraction shuttle engines whined. Thel was trying to run. Not today, Ethan growled. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't need one. He grabbed the broadcast mic again. Lyra, now! From the depths of the machine, Lyra heard him. She had 1 ounce of strength left. She tapped into the station's flight control grid
know
using
what
her
I'm
authority
doing.
codes, codes she had sworn to protect, now used to hunt. Override authorization, VE, House Third, Target, Shuttle Alpha. The shuttle's engines sputtered. The navigation system locked down. The vehicle drifted slowly, helplessly, back down to the landing pad on the roof. Ethan didn't wait for the shuttle to land. He sprinted for the backstage stairs, taking them 3 at a time. He reached the roof just as the shuttle hatch hissed open. Thel stumbled out, coughing in the smoke of his ruined escape. He looked at Ethan. The strategist's face was twisted in a rictus of hate. "You ruin everything," Thel spat, reaching for a pistol inside his coat. "You are just a grunt. You don't understand the big picture." Ethan didn't slow down. He stepped inside Thel's guard. He slapped the pistol away with his left hand and drove his right fist into Thel's jaw. The strategist crumpled. Ethan stood over him. His breathing was ragged. The rage was there, hot and heavy in his chest. He could kill him. He could end it right here. Nobody would blame him. He looked at his fist. It was shaking. He looked at Thel, who was bleeding and pathetic on the ground. "Justice," Ethan whispered to himself, "not revenge." He keyed his mic, which was still broadcasting to the entire venue below. "Security," Ethan said, his voice flat. "I have the prisoner. He is yours." Ethan found Lyra in the control room under the stage. She was on her knees, slumped against the obsidian pillar. Her dress was scorched. Her skin was gray. The bioluminescence faded to a dull, dying ember. "Lyra!" Ethan slid across the floor, catching her just as she tipped forward. He pulled her into his lap, cradling her head. She was burning up. Her eyes were unfocused, rolling back in her head. "Stay with me," Ethan pleaded, brushing the hair from her face. "Stay with me. You promised." He pressed his hand to the back of her neck, searching for the pressure point, searching for a pulse. He didn't care about the rules. He didn't care about the bond. He touched her cheek, her forehead, her hands. "Lyra, please." Her eyelids fluttered. She took a jagged breath. Her violet eyes focused, slowly, painfully on his face. She looked at his torn tuxedo. She looked at the cut on his forehead. She let out a weak, breathy laugh. "So," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "the date wasn't over." Ethan laughed. It was a wet, broken sound, half sob. He pulled her closer, burying his face in her neck, feeling the slow, steady return of her pulse against his skin. Not even close. "Lyra." Not even close. He held her there in the quiet dark, while above them, the world began to wake up. The fallout from the Unity Gala did not settle like dust. It settled like ash, heavy and gray, coating every layer of the coalition government. In the weeks following the event, the news feeds were a chaotic storm of revelations,
crazy.
denials, and grainy footage of a human man and an alien woman standing on a stage while the sky rained hard light snow. The trials began 3 days after the event. They were closed-door tribunals held in high-orbit stations, far from the prying eyes of the populace, but the leaks were impossible to plug. The network strategist Thel had built was vast. It was not a snake with one head. It was a hydra. For every co-conspirator exposed, a corrupted admiral here, a bribed senator there. 2 more burrowed deeper into the shadows, waiting for the heat to die down. Public trust fractured. The beautiful lie of Harmony Match was broken, revealed as a surveillance engine. But in the cracks of that broken
Alright,
trust,
forward is ass.
something else began to grow. It was messy, it was unpolished, it was human, and it was alien. People stopped trusting the glossy brochures and started asking their neighbors real questions. Ethan Cole was cleared of all charges. The footage of him saving civilians, broadcast to billions, made the terrorist narrative impossible to sustain. But exoneration felt less like freedom and more like a different kind of cage. He was no longer the forgotten veteran. He was a symbol, a hero, a label he detested because it felt like a shroud. Lyra Vey faced a more complex purgatory. To the reformists, she was a savior who had risked neurological collapse to stop a massacre. To the traditionalists on her homeworld, she was a traitor who had exposed Ethelgard technology to lower species. The High Council was in a deadlock, debating whether to recall her for reconditioning, a polite term for wiping her mind, or to honor her as a necessary scandal to maintain diplomatic leverage. While the galaxy argued about what they were, Ethan and Lyra disappeared. The safe house was a small, weather-beaten cottage on the jagged coast of the Pacific Northwest, provided by Auntie Zol's network. It was miles from the nearest city, hidden by dense pine forests and the constant roaring mist of the ocean. Here, the air didn't smell of ozone or recycled station oxygen. It smelled of salt, wet cedar, and cold rain. Ethan stood on the wooden deck, watching the gray waves smash against the black rocks.
Hello.
He held a mug of coffee that had gone cold in his hands. He was wearing a thick sweater Zol had bullied him into taking, and for the first time in 5 years, he wasn't carrying a weapon. The door behind him slid open. Lyra stepped out. She moved slower than before. The neurological burn from the resonance override had left her with a subtle tremor in her left hand, and her bioluminescence, usually a steady flow of light, now flickered occasionally like a candle in a draft. She stood beside him, leaning against the railing. She didn't look at the ocean. She looked at him. "You are brooding," she observed softly. It is a very loud silence. Ethan took a sip of the cold coffee and grimaced. "I am not brooding. I am thinking." "That is dangerous," Lyra said, a small smile touching her lips. Ethan turned to face her. The wind whipped her silver hair across her face, but she didn't brush it away. "I am thinking about how quiet it is," Ethan said. "After the noise of the gala, after the screaming, this feels wrong, like we are waiting for the other shoe to drop." Lyra nodded. "That is the trauma speaking, Ethan. It tells you that peace is just a pause between attacks. It tells you that safety is a trap." "And what does your diplomat training tell you?" Ethan asked. Lyra looked at her trembling hand. She clenched it into a fist to steady it. "My training tells me that I am currently a stateless entity with a bounty on my head and a nervous system that is still rebooting. But..." She looked up, her violet eyes clear. "But it also tells me that I am standing on a deck with the only person in the galaxy who knows my real name. Not my title. Me." Ethan felt that pull again, the magnetic hum that existed between them. It wasn't the adrenaline of the chase anymore. It was deeper. It was the heavy grounding gravity of a planet you had crash-landed on and decided to call home. He reached out. This time, he didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for permission because the permission was already woven into the air between them. He placed his hand over hers on the railing. His skin was rough, scarred from years of war. Her skin was cool, smooth as polished stone, and pulsing with faint light. Lyra didn't flinch. She turned her hand over, interlacing her fingers with his. The contact was electric. Ethan felt the faint buzzing feedback of her neurolink, a ghost of her emotions bleeding into his. He felt a wave of calm that wasn't his own. He felt a fierce, protective warmth. "We have rules," Ethan whispered, remembering the boundaries they had set in the hotel room. "Rules are for negotiations," Lyra answered, stepping closer. "This is not a negotiation." She looked at the scars on his neck, then up to his eyes. "I spent my life being used. Ethan. My beauty was a key to open doors. My biology was a tool for alliances. I was a weapon in a silk dress." She squeezed his hand. "But with you, I am not being used. I am being seen." Ethan stepped in, closing the distance. He wrapped his free arm around her waist, pulling her against him. The wind howled around them, but in the circle of their arms, it was quiet. "I'm not a hero." "Lyra," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm just a guy who is tired of fighting alone." "You are not alone," she murmured against his chest. "Not anymore." They stood there for a long time, the cold ocean spray misting their faces, negotiating a new kind of closeness.
Oh, shit.
It wasn't the desperate, clinging touch of two people about to die. It was the deliberate, terrifying touch of two people planning to live. The peace lasted for 2 weeks. It broke on a Tuesday morning, not with an explosion,
Yes.
but with a notification on the datapad Lyra had encrypted to monitor the news feeds. They were in the kitchen. Ethan was making toast. Lyra was trying to understand the concept of peanut butter, which she found texturally suspicious. The datapad chimed. It was a priority red alert from the underground network. Lyra picked it up. Her face went pale, the light in her skin draining away instantly. "What is it?" Ethan asked, dropping the knife.
I know, right?
Lyra turned the screen toward him. It was a video file. It was playing on every major news outlet on Earth and the colony worlds. In the video, Lyra was sitting in a dark room, speaking to a hooded figure. The audio was crisp.
Damn it.
"The humans are weak," the video Lyra said, her voice dripping with contempt. "The Unity Gala is the perfect stage. We will overload the anchors. We will crush them in their own monument. And when the dust settles, Ethelgard will rule the ashes." Ethan stared at the screen. It looked perfect. The lighting, the micro-expressions, the cadence of her voice. It was flawless. It was also a lie. "I never said that," Lyra
Back
whispered,
kick doesn't work
horror
when
tightening her
when it
throat.
grabs like that?
"I was never in that room. That conversation never happened. It's a deep fake," Ethan said, his voice hard. "A military-grade fabrication. Thel's network isn't dead. They are striking back." He scrolled down to the comments scrolling beneath the
Yeah, he was
video.
putting that pressure.
The public sentiment, which had been fragilely rebuilding, had shattered. Alien monster. She played us. War.
Oh my god.
We
this
need
should be a
war.
back kick.
Lyra dropped the pad on the table. Her hands were
Oh my
shaking
God.
violently
Like,
now.
really bad.
"They are rewriting the narrative," she said. "They are turning me back into the villain. If this spreads, it won't just be a scandal. It will be a pogrom. My people will be targeted. Mixed families will be hunted."
Hello.
She looked at the door, her eyes wide with panic. "I have to leave. Ethan, if I stay
crazy.
here,
Stop doing
I
that
put you in the
crap.
crosshairs.
I used to do
I
it all
put
the
the
time.
network in danger."
All
She
the
turned to
time.
run toward the bedroom, presumably to pack. Ethan moved faster.
All the
He caught
time.
her by the arm, spinning her around.
I don't know
"Stop,"
what's
he
wrong
ordered.
with me,
"Let me
guys."
go," Lyra cried, struggling against his grip. The panic in her eyes was real, not for herself, but for him. "I am a liability."
All right.
"You are not a liability," Ethan shouted, shaking her gently. "You are my partner." He pulled her in, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. This is what they want. They want you to run. They want you to hide. Because if you hide, you look guilty. If you
can't
run,
lose to him.
you prove them right." Lyra stopped struggling when she looked at him, her chest heaving. "Then what do we do?" she whispered. "They have the media. They have the lies. Then what do we have?" Ethan looked at the datapad, where the lie was still playing on a loop. "We have the truth," Ethan said, "and we stopped letting them tell the story." He let her go and walked to the table. He picked up the datapad and smashed the off button. "We are not going to hide, Lyra. We are going to stand up." The plan was reckless, improvised, and entirely outside the government playbook. They weren't going to hold a press conference. They weren't going to petition the courts. They were going to talk to the people. They set up a camera in the living room of the safe house. No filters, no holographic backdrops. Just a messy kitchen, a half-eaten jar of peanut butter, and two tired people sitting on a couch that had seen better days. Ethan adjusted the lens. "Are we doing this live?" Lyra asked. She was wearing one of Ethan's oversized shirts, her hair tied back in a messy bun. She looked nothing like the icy diplomat from the gala. She looked real. "Live," Ethan confirmed. "No edits. No chance for them to claim it as doctored." He sat down next to her. Their thighs touched. He didn't pull away. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on. Ethan looked into the lens. "Hi," he said. "You probably know my face. I am the guy they called a terrorist, and then a hero. And now, well, I guess I am just Ethan." He gestured to Lyra. "And this is Lyra, the woman the internet says is planning to enslave humanity." Lyra looked at the camera. She took a breath. "Hello," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tight in her lap. "I have seen the video. It is a very impressive piece of engineering. The voice modulation is 98% accurate." She leaned forward. "But it is a lie. And I think you know it is a lie. Because if I wanted to destroy you, I would not have burned out my own neural pathways, saving 3,000 of you at the gala." She pulled down the collar of her shirt, revealing the scarring on her neck, the faint spiderweb lines where the energy overload had damaged her skin. "War is easy," Lyra said softly. "Hate is easy. It is a gravity well that pulls you in. Trusting someone different than you, that is the hardest thing in the galaxy." Ethan took her hand, lifting it into the frame. "We are launching something new today," Ethan said. "Not a government program, not a treaty, a network, the Integration Initiative. It is run by us, by the families you see in the grocery store, by the neighbors you share fences with. We are releasing the source code for the deepfake detection," Lyra added. "We are releasing the real logs from the gala. We are giving you the truth, raw and unpolished." Ethan looked at Lyra, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And we are also going to show you that we are not masterminds. We are just two people trying to figure this out." He looked at Lyra. "Go ahead, say the thing." Lyra stiffened. She looked terrified. "Must I?" "Yes, it humanizes you." Lyra sighed. She looked at the camera with deadly seriousness. "We want you to join us. We want to build a future that is..." She paused, searching for the word Ethan had taught her 10 minutes ago. "That is..."
Damn, bro.
"No cap." She looked at Ethan, panicked. "Did I use that correctly? Is the cap relevant to the future?" Ethan burst out laughing. It wasn't a polite chuckle. It was a full-body, wheezing laugh that made him double over. "No." Ethan gasped. "Not even close. You sound like a robotic teenager."
Alright, guys, I think I need to
Lyra
get off
frowned,
second.
looking offended. "I was told it means no falsehood. Your language is ridiculous. Why is clothing
feeling
involved in
it.
truth-telling?" Ethan wiped a tear from his eye, still laughing. The stream didn't cut.
Like, at all.
The world watched the terrifying alien seductress argue about slang with the war-torn soldier. They watched them bicker. They watched them laugh. And in that laughter, the deep fake lost its power.
Not even lobby.
Because you
like,
can
I don't
fake
even
a
wanna play
speech,
this game right
and you
now.
can fake a threat. But you cannot fake the specific, messy, authentic chemistry of two people who have seen the worst of each other and chosen to stay.
Like,
The
at
video
all.
went viral, not in pockets, but everywhere.
Yeah.
The hashtag
don't play
NoCap
Fortnite
became a global
or-
rallying cry, ironically reclaimed by the integration
Tekken
movement.
is just not it, though.
The initiative
I think I need
exploded
an actual break
overnight.
from it.
Thousands of messages poured in, not hate mail, but stories. Stories from humans and aliens who had been hiding their friendships, their relationships, their businesses. The silent majority who wanted peace suddenly found their voice. But the danger wasn't over. 2 days later, a secure channel call came through to the safe house. It was Ambassador Kale, a senior Ethelgard diplomat and one of the few moderates left. His holographic face looked grave.
I'm like
"Lyra,"
wondering if that
he
game's
said,
too slow for me right now.
"the High Council has seen your broadcast." "And?" Lyra asked, standing tall. "They are divided," Kale admitted. "The traditionalists are furious. They say you have demeaned your caste." They say you are behaving like a commoner. I am behaving like a person, Lyra shot back. Kale sighed. Perhaps. But you must know, the hardliners are not done. They cannot touch you politically right now, you are too popular. But they will try to make an example of you. If you step out into the open, if you go to the plaza tomorrow for the rally, we cannot guarantee your safety. I know, Lyra said. Diplomats are warning of retaliation.
The amount of shit you can do with just
Kale
holding
pressed.
down.
A sniper, a drone, a zealous human with a grudge.
Well, how did I do that?
I know, Lyra repeated. She looked at Ethan, who was cleaning his pistol at the table, not to use it, but out of habit.
Silent F?
We are going,
Silent Hill
Kale.
F?
We are done hiding.
Billy,
Kale looked at her for a long moment. Then, he bowed his head. Then walk with the ancestors. Lyra Vey, you are braver than I.
How did I
The
do
Central
that?
Plaza of New Seattle was a sea of people. It was the same place where, 5 years ago, the first anti-alien riots had started. Today, it was crowded with banners of green and blue, the colors of the new initiative. Ethan and Lyra stood in the waiting area behind the makeshift stage. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Drones hovered overhead, news drones, police drones, and perhaps others, unseen and lethal. Ethan adjusted his jacket. He wasn't wearing armor. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He was wearing a simple gray jacket and jeans. Are you scared? He asked. Lyra stood beside him. She was wearing a dress of simple white fabric, her silver hair loose. She looked radiant,
This game's not making
not
me
with
very
aristocratic
happy today.
power, but with inner light.
So,
Terrified, she admitted. My threat assessment algorithm is screaming at me to find a bunker. Mine too, Ethan said. He looked at the curtain that separated them from the crowd, from the world. Lyra turned to him. Her expression was solemn.
Yeah, I really like her,
Ethan,
but
before we go out there,
I really need to.
she stepped
practice
close,
my-
her voice lowering to a whisper.
I need to
Bonding
keep
with you.
blocking.
It changed me. Not just my politics, my biology. I feel the world differently now. I feel you differently. She placed her hand over his heart. I cannot unfeel you, Ethan. Even if they reconditioned me, I think the ghost of you would still be there, haunting my neurons. Ethan covered her hand with his. You didn't fix me, Lyra, he said, his voice thick. I still have the nightmares. I still have the scars. You didn't magically make the war go away. He squeezed her hand. But you gave me a reason to wake up from the nightmares. You gave me a reason to keep choosing life, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Lyra smiled, a small, ferocious smile that contained all the defiance of a woman who had faced down an empire. Then let us go, she said. Let us be the problem they cannot solve.
Vibes.
They stepped out from behind the curtain. The roar of the crowd hit them like a physical wave. Thousands of faces, human, Ethelgard, Krell, Valerian, turned toward them. There were no shields, no bulletproof glass. They were completely
Solo?
exposed.
Practice.
Ethan scanned the
Okay, I'm
rooftops.
down.
He saw the glint of lenses, maybe scopes. He didn't flinch. He
This
felt
is
Lyra
gonna
beside
give
him.
me some practice.
She held her head high, her violet eyes scanning the horizon, refusing to cower.
Scared.
They walked to the center of the plaza. The sun broke through the clouds, bathing the wet pavement in light. Ethan looked at the crowd. He saw the fear in some eyes. He saw the hope in others. He saw the messy, complicated reality of a world trying to heal. He looked at Lyra. She wasn't looking at the crowd anymore. She was looking at him. Slowly,
Emote so I can
deliberately.
copy you.
Ethan reached out. He didn't hide it. He didn't try to be subtle. He took her hand. A ripple went through the crowd, a gasp, followed by a hush. The camera drone zoomed in. The image was beamed to every screen on the planet. The human soldier and the alien envoy, holding hands in the center of the city, fingers interlaced, skin against skin. It was a violation of the old treaties. It was a rejection of the fear. It was a declaration of interdependence.
All right, guys, this is
Ethan squeezed her
some
hand,
practice.
feeling the pulse of her light against his
Playing by
palm.
myself.
He leaned in, his voice quiet,
Let's
meant only
go.
for her, but echoing the journey they had taken from that first hollow restaurant table. "I thought the blind date was over," he said, his voice steady with earned certainty, "until you arrived as my match." Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining with tears she refused to shed, her grip tightening on his hand as if she would never let go.
Going above me?
She answered with that small, ferocious smile. "Then let's keep choosing it," she whispered. "Every day." They turned to face the crowd, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next.